Chapter 2997. Ling Han was not envious of Feng Wuding's possession of 100 planes, because he possessed as many as several 100,000. In comparison, that was only a small matter, and could not even compare to a fraction of what he possessed. What annoyed him was that Feng Wuding was born with 10 first-class talismans. Logically speaking, that should be his, right? Also, I have one more thing to tell you. The will of the previous generation Yuan world said. This could be called the world's will. It didn't belong to any existence, but was condensed from the souls of all living beings in the previous generation Yuan world. In the last war, extinction was hit by the destructive power of the world. Its body was destroyed, and only a trace of its divine soul was left. However, after suffering this loss, the current frenzy has become even more terrifying. Compared to my generation, extinction only devoured 3 planes. The current madness far exceeds this number. According to my calculations, even if the Yuan world is destroyed again, it won't be able to kill madness. Instead, it will obtain the world core. The worlds will suddenly stop. After a pause, it said, in short, madness will become stronger. You won't be able to kill it alone. Ling Han's heart jumped. What the hell was this world core? Why is this voice hemming and hawing on this? It was going to die soon anyway. What was there to hide? Ling Han didn't ask. If it wanted to tell him, it wouldn't suddenly stop. He just said, do you want me to join forces with Feng Wuding? You do want to join forces with someone, but it's not Feng Wuding. The world's will said. Then who? Ling Han asked. Extinction. Pfft. Ling Han directly spat it out. Extinction? Are you stupid? The previous Yuan world's collapse was caused by extinction, and extinction was the predecessor of madness. You want extinction to kill madness? Hee, it would be strange if extinction agreed. Don't be surprised. The world's will said, when I discovered that extinction still had a trace of consciousness, I knew that it would rise again one day. So, I hit extinction's corpse, and used the last of my power to repair her. I even gave birth to a new consciousness. The 7 steps are the 6 types of essence powers, and the unique power of a plane. This unique power can be condensed into 1, or it can be condensed into 100, or even 1,000. It can even contain a real plane, and possess even greater power. This can be called the 7th type of essence powers. That's how madness is. Every time it devours a plane, the 7th power becomes stronger, far surpassing any essence power. So it's invincible. Even 7 steps can't resist it. To suppress it, you have to surpass the 7th power. But you started late, and you can't directly devour planes. You can't surpass madness. Ling Han thought for a moment and nodded slowly. If he relied on himself to strengthen those planes in his body, how long would that take? Perhaps one day, he could really transform one of the planes in his body into a super high-grade plane. But at that time, perhaps madness would have already devoured all the planes and unified the origin world. Even though the essence particles here formed a wall, abundant in energy, this was still only a portion of the past origin world, a remnant. Taking a step back, even if he gave Ling Han all of it, he would at most become the previous generation's origin world. But one must know that even if the Yuan world of the previous generation was destroyed, it would only be severely injured and unable to kill it. But the current frenzy was even stronger. That was why the world will said that he couldn't kill frenzy on his own. Ling Han's expression did not change, but his heart was like a tide. This world's will was very calculative. It had actually hidden extinction's body long ago, and used its remaining power to repair her, giving her a new consciousness, and becoming the key to defeating madness, which was the other her. And he had also become a chess piece. Madness chose him, and so did the will of the world. He did not agree with what the world said. It was really just a coincidence. How could there be such a coincidence? However, it was obvious that the other party wouldn't say it out loud. This guy was hiding a lot of secrets such as the core of the world. Also, did extinction give birth to a new will? Or did the will of this world infuse its own consciousness and replace it? Maybe it could, maybe it couldn't. Who knew? If Ling Han were to believe in such a strange person, it would really be laughable. Here, Ling Han solved some mysteries, but also gained even more puzzles. He even felt like he was trapped in some big conspiracy. So, if you want to destroy frenzy, you must obtain the 8th type of power. The worlds will continued. The 8th type of power, the 7th type was still fine. After all, it already existed long ago. It was just a different way of saying it. But what was the 8th type? There was such a power? Then why had no one ever mastered it and reached the unprecedented 8 steps? Actually, you've already seen this power, the worlds will said. Yin and yang, life and death, creation and destruction, positive and negative. These are all manifestations of the 8th type of intrinsic power. However, no one can grasp it alone. 2 people must join forces to do so. So it wanted him to join forces with extinction. Ling Han thought about it and said, "Are you sure that extinction will join forces with me to fight frenzy?" "I'm sure." The world's will was very sure. "Alright, I don't have much time. I need to focus on improving your body, so that you truly have the ability to transform your body into a Yuan world." Boom! A mysterious power entered Ling Han's body. This should be on the spiritual level. After all, the words worlds will explained everything. But soon, this power dissipated, and the ball of light quickly extinguished. Rumble! Amidst the violent tremors, this space was collapsing. After a while, Ling Han saw a void storm blowing over. He understood. With the dissipation of the world's will, this Yuan world of the previous generation had also completely lost its support. The plane barrier was no longer effective, and naturally, it was penetrated by the void energy. This place would soon cease to exist and return to the void. Because this was originally the territory of the void, such a plane group should not exist at all. Hong Long Long, the void storm wreaked havoc, yet Ling Han remained unmoved. He put up a defense. His physique was almost indestructible, and he would not care about this kind of impact at all. He looked inside his body, although the world's will spoke openly, and without any selfish motives. Ling Han could not completely believe it, let alone trust it. Did the other party leave any tricks in his body? Did it suddenly take control of his body and replace him? Chapter 2998. He examined carefully again and again, meticulously down to every cell. But Ling Han finally came to the conclusion that he really didn't find anything wrong. His cultivation level and power didn't change in the slightest, but there was a feeling that there was something extra in his body. This was a change, because in one of Ling Han's cells, there was a power of the plane forming, though it was only a sliver now, and couldn't even compare to the power of the gushing spring tear. As long as it continued like this, there would be a day that it would evolve into a new plane. In other words, Ling Han had already broken through the previous barrier and obtained the ability to create a new plane. Then, there was only one ability left that hadn't proved that he could push one or even a few planes to a super high level. But it was hard to prove it now. After all, he was limited by his cultivation level. He had to reach the 7th step before he could confirm whether he had such an ability. In truth, as long as the plane in his body could grow endlessly, then his strength would never have a limit, and he could continue to grow. He tore open the void and returned to the origin world. He spent a whole 500 billion years on this journey, and he was sure that the world had already changed, and things remained the same, but the people had changed. He returned to the Xuanma plain, and soon found the Empress and the others. Everyone was living in seclusion, because they hadn't dealt with the trouble of Chong Yen, Puyu, and the others. Seeing Ling Han suddenly appear, everyone was incredibly surprised. This trip had really been too many years, and there had long been rumors that Ling Han had already died in the last era's origin world. Though the Empress and the others didn't believe it, too much time had passed, and they couldn't help but worry. Ling Han gave a rough account of his experience, but he cut out the part where he encountered the will of the world at the end, because he didn't want everyone to worry for him needlessly. Everyone was happy. Ling Han's strength had improved further, and he could truly match any 7th step elite. This was an extremely good thing. The foreign battlefield has already reopened, the heavenly venerable origin-born said. As early as 400 billion years ago, madness had made a comeback and launched a fierce attack on the Xuanma plain. After devouring the fiery frost plain, Frenzy's strength had indeed improved greatly, although its main body was still being held back by many seventh steps. Even with the addition of Zhou Heng and the other 3 seventh steps, the situation was still not as good as it was in the fiery frost plane. Chaos could spare more energy to create even more armies. This time, the extraterritorial battlefield was divided into 2 levels. One was for the 7th step cultivators, and the other was for the 6th step and 5th step cultivators. This was probably a modification made by Frenzy. The fewer the number of monsters on the battlefield, the greater its advantage. As long as all the monsters were at level 6, it would be fine. It had the advantage in numbers. Luckily, Xian Chihu, Lin Yulian, and the other supreme geniuses had reached stage 7 battle prowess. Even if they didn't have an indestructible body, their battle prowess was too strong. They were barely able to hold the line of defense, but they were slowly retreating. It wasn't like before, when they retreated 1,000 miles. Ling Han found it strange. Just how many 6-step monsters did Frenzy create that even 4 7-step experts were unable to reverse the situation? I have to go to the extraterritorial battlefield to take a look, Ling Han said. Frenzy's advancement had to be stopped, because it was impossible for a super high-grade plane to be born in the Yuan world now. So, as long as the Xuanma plane fell, Frenzy would completely occupy the Yuan world, like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Even the 7th step cultivators wouldn't be able to stop it at all. No matter how deep the enmity between Ling Han and Chong Yen and the others was, in the face of the Yuan world's survival, this was all a small matter. Of course, this parting would be more than 500 billion years. No matter what, Ling Han couldn't leave immediately. He stayed at home for 3 years before going on his way. The extraterritorial battlefield had already been fighting for so many years. Waiting for another 3 years wouldn't make a difference, right? In these 3 years, he spent most of his time accompanying his wife and children. Other than that, he gave pointers to the others in their cultivation. As Ling Duanyan ran around, the descendants of the Ling family, who were scattered all over the place, slowly gathered and formed a large clan once again. However, they were very low-key. After all, Ling Han hadn't returned, and they had offended quite a few 7th-step supreme martial artists. Ling Han used his divine sense to sweep over every descendant. Unfortunately, Ling Duanyan was already the most outstanding. However, Ling Duanyan ultimately stopped at the 9th heaven. He was still far away from becoming a celestial venerable. It would be difficult for another celestial venerable to emerge from his descendants. Ling Han also knew that he was asking for too much. Just look at how many celestial venerables had emerged from his children and grandchildren. In the end, Ling Han brought Ling Fifan to the extraterritorial battlefield. There couldn't be too many people, because Ling Han had no problem protecting himself now. However, if the 7th-step cultivators started fighting, he wouldn't be able to protect too many people. This was also suitable for Poyu and the others. If they were to fight with Ling Han, they definitely wouldn't have the spare energy to take care of the people around them. The problem was, these 5 people came from the Yuan world of the previous generation. Apart from Feng Wuding, who they cared about, was there anyone else that they needed to take care of? Therefore, this wasn't fair. They could be very straightforward and fight as they pleased. They didn't have any misgivings about holding back, for fear of harming innocent bystanders. Ling Fifan was currently at the 2nd step, and he was at the bottleneck of breaking through to the 3rd step. Bringing him to the extraterritorial battlefield to experience a fierce battle of life and death would be of great help to him in his breakthrough. Thinking of what Chong Yen and the others had said in the past, a question surfaced in Ling Han's heart. That was why they had lied about those life imprints, saying that they had collected them in advance, and that the worlds will hadn't added them to them. Claiming merit? It was impossible. Did the 7th-step cultivators need such a false reputation? Then, there was only one reason. They wanted to conceal the existence of the world's will. The problem was why? Ling Han had come into contact with the world's will before, and he had seen the scene of the 5 supremes sleeping. He didn't think that it was a secret. Could it be that these 5 people knew something that he wasn't? Ling Han thought for a long time. However, if this was really a secret, he obviously wouldn't be able to see through it. Moreover, It must be earth-shattering. Otherwise, why would the 5 people hide it? Since it could make a 7th-step supreme being so tight-lipped, the relationship must be huge. Under Ling Han's lead, the grandfather and grandson quickly arrived at the extraterritorial battlefield. Just like in the Frost Dimension, a great wall had been built here to neutralize the Frenzy Army's advantage in numbers. Ling Han stood in the sky and looked into the distance. He saw that the Frenzy Army was stationed 10,000 miles away from the city, densely packed together. This scale was really shocking. Who is it? A figure flew over, exuding a majestic aura. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly, revealing a hint of killing intent. It was Xian Chihu. Yes, it's you. Xian Chihu naturally recognized Ling Han, and he also raised his gaze. Your life is really tough. You actually didn't die in the origin world of the previous generation. End of this chapter. Cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 3000. Me. Ling Han was slightly surprised. Why? Because I didn't know them at all. I just accidentally revealed that my surname was Ling, and that I was your grandson. As a result, they fought with me indiscriminately, Ling Fifan said. He seemed to be very curious. Old master, how many enemies did you make in the past? It seemed that he would have to think for a while before he could answer this question. Ling Han touched his chin and thought seriously for a while. Then he said, I killed most of my enemies, so they didn't leave any traces. Well, this answer was also a bit domineering. Did those people tell you their identities? Ling Han asked. No, Ling Fifan said. Then he added, I only cared about the fight, so I didn't think about asking them. This fight was really stupid, but it was really the style of the old Ling family. If they wanted to fight, they would fight, and they would not be afraid at all. Then why did you come here to ask for help? Ling Han asked. It's safer to heal here. Ling Fifan was quite strong-willed. Ling Han nodded. If you meet someone you can't defeat, don't force yourself. You can come to my place. Okay. Ling Fifan agreed. Then he sat down with his legs crossed and started to heal his wounds. He looked very miserable, but in fact, they were only flesh wounds, and he would recover in a few days. He went out again. He thought that he had suffered some losses in the previous fight, so he naturally wanted to get back at them. The old Ling family would not keep quiet after suffering losses. Ling Han didn't care. As long as Ling Fifan's life was not in danger, he would not intervene. A few days later, Ling Fifan came again with injuries, but he had a smug smile on his face. Obviously, he had injured those people more seriously. A few days later, the situation was different. Ling Fifan came back, but as soon as he entered the door, he fell to the ground and lost consciousness. A second-step celestial master could lose consciousness? How seriously was he injured? Ling Han could not help but reveal a hint of anger. If Ling Fifan had fought against the Frenzy Army, even if his limbs were broken, he would only feel heartache and not anger. However, in front of his compatriots, his own grandson had been beaten to such a state. Naturally, he was furious. He scanned Ling Fifan with his divine sense, and was slightly relieved. Fortunately, although Ling Fifan's body was covered with injuries, his foundation was not hurt, and he had only fainted from exhaustion. It was hard to imagine what kind of tough battle Ling Fifan had been through to the point where he was completely exhausted. Ling Han hadn't even stood up when he noticed a group of people walking over. Their target was the stone house he was in. For the past few days, Ling Han had been in closed-door cultivation and had not seen anyone here. Therefore, these people were definitely not here for him, but for Ling Fifan, most likely because they saw Ling Fifan entering this place. Ling Fifan, hurry up and get out here. Someone shouted from outside. Ling Han frowned. So many years had passed. Why had the foreign battlefield become so chaotic? In the past, military discipline was very strict, and private fights were forbidden. Those who broke the rules would be heavily punished. What was going on now? They actually dared to openly kill their way here. Coward, weren't you very arrogant before? Why are you afraid now? If you're afraid, then get out here and kowtow 3 times. Then say that everyone with the surname Ling is a bastard 100 times. How can 100 times be enough? At least 1,000 times. Ha 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 ha. The people outside couldn't help but laugh loudly. They were extremely arrogant. Ling Han scanned them with his divine sense, and found that among the 24 people, only one was at the first step, 22 were at the second step, and one was at the third step. No wonder Ling Fifan would fight until he was exhausted. He was not as monstrous as Ling Han, so how could he not be exhausted like a cat playing with a mouse? Ling Han's expression was very ugly. He wanted to eliminate the frenzy, but he did not have the ambition to protect the world. Even if he did, it would only be ranked second. What he truly wanted to protect were his family and friends. Now that his grandson was being played so miserably, how could he still endure it? So what if he killed these bastards? With his current strength, what else did he have to worry about? Taking 10,000 steps back, even if he did not have the combat strength of the seventh step, didn't he still dare to flip the table with the seventh step? He stood up, opened the door, and slowly walked out. Who is this person? TSK, he looks so confident. It's so annoying. Who does he think he is? The people outside were all talking. With Ling Han's current strength and aura, if he did not take the initiative to show his prowess, apart from the seventh step, who else could see that he was extraordinary? Ling Han's gaze swept across, and these heavenly venerables gave him a sense of familiarity. He thought about it, and suddenly realized that these people were the life imprints that Chong Yen, Poyu, and the others had extracted from their bodies. They were the seeds that were preserved in the previous Yuan world. Compared to Feng Wuting's outstanding performance, the others were naturally not good enough. More than 500 billion years had passed, and they had only taken 1 step, 2 steps, and 3 steps. However, Feng Wuting had received the full support of Chong Yen and the others, so his cultivation speed was naturally very fast. Moreover, he had indeed obtained some benefits from the previous Yuan world, so he definitely surpassed his peers. Are you the ones who injured my grandson? He asked calmly. That's your grandson. Those people laughed. So what? We still want to beat you up like a grandson. Fine. Ling Han nodded. These people had unreasonably started a war with Ling Fifan, and bullied him with numbers. Now, they had even brought out a third-step cultivator to force Ling Fifan into such a state. This filled Ling Han with rage. He did not care why. Since they liked to use violence, then he would use violence to solve the problem. What's so good about it? You want to be my grandson? Someone laughed. Bang! Ling Han punched out, and that person turned into a mist of blood. Second-step cultivator. He was just a piece of trash. Instantly, the entire place quietened down and became deathly still. A second-step cultivator had actually died just like that. Although they had forced Ling Fifan into a state of exhaustion, they still did not dare to kill him. This was because this was the foreign battlefield, and everyone needed to be united to face the enemy. Killing one's own people, no one could afford to bear such a bad reputation. However, Ling Han's attack was clean and without hesitation. He had killed that person with a single punch, as if that person was not a second-step cultivator, but an insignificant piece of trash. This was too audacious. Moreover, he had killed a second-step cultivator with a single punch. What kind of concept was that? At least the strength of a third-step cultivator. Everyone was naturally afraid. They were afraid that Ling Han would start killing again. And apart from a third-step cultivator, who else among them could match him? What's wrong? Why is there no sound now? Ling Han asked calmly. You are too audacious. You actually dared to kill someone in the camp. Who are you? They mustered up their courage to ask, because that third-step cultivator was already standing in front of them, giving them courage. Chapter 3002. Yilong was at the third step, while most of the people here were at the second step. A few of them were at the first step, so he could still hold on for now. But the problem was that while the others were unrestrained in their attacks, he was full of misgivings. He didn't even dare to injure them, let alone kill them. This naturally made him extremely passive. He had great strength, but he could only use 10 to 20% of it. Before long, he was hit a few times, causing him to stumble and blood to flow from the corner of his mouth. Unfortunately, he still didn't dare to fight back with his full strength, afraid that he would really be wronged. I didn't do it. Listen to me. He kept shouting. Unfortunately, his shouts were completely drowned out by the angry roars of the crowd. Moreover, even if someone heard him, they wouldn't care. Who would believe him? Just like that, Yilong was continuously bombarded, and his injuries became more and more serious. Even the initiator Ling Han hadn't expected such a development. He'd only wanted Huang Feng to pass on a message to let the other party die in that damned place, and then lure Feng Wuting over. Who would have thought that Yilong would become the scapegoat? Yilong felt wronged, and he also felt an indescribable regret. Why had he sided with the Wind Alliance? Although the Wind Alliance had a child of destiny and 5 7-step supremes, these people had treated him as an outsider and rejected him. They hadn't accepted him at all. He was a dignified 3rd-step supremes, so why should he suffer such grievances? Now that he'd been treated as the murderer, he wouldn't be able to complain even if he was beaten to death. Stop! A cold shout rang out, filled with terrifying might. Immediately, half of the people stopped, while the other half slowed down their attacks. In just a few breaths' time, the situation was completely under control. A stalwart person walked over, descending step by step like a dragon or a tiger. Lord Feng! Lord Feng Qing! Many people immediately bowed. This was a 4th-step heavenly venerable, extremely monstrous. Even Feng Wuting had praised him before. Thus, even though this person wasn't from the previous origin world, everyone still gave him face. Feng Qing walked over and glanced at Yilong with a slight frown. Lord Feng, I've been wronged. Yilong was incomparably emotional, grabbing Feng Qing's hand. He felt as if his tears were about to fall. When had he ever been wronged? Those who could become Empyreans were all geniuses of their respective planes. Along the way, they must have crushed other geniuses in their glorious history. Therefore, Yilong must be extremely aggrieved right now. How could he not be aggrieved? What happened? Feng Qing asked. Yilong hurriedly recounted everything that had happened, and repeatedly swore that if he told even half a lie, then he would never be able to take the 4th step. To an Empyrean, such an oath could not be any heavier. Thus, everyone began to hesitate. Could it be that what Yilong said was true? Go and investigate, Feng Qing said. This was very easy to verify. Previously, Huang Feng's group had 24 people. Sure enough, there were many witnesses that Wasp and his party did go out together. Where did they go? Feng Qing asked again. Someone who had participated in the previous fight with Ling Fifan told her about this matter. In other words, Wasp and his party should have gone to look for Ling Fifan today, Feng Qing analyzed. But 24 people went out, and only one returned. The problem must be with Ling Fifan. Someone felt that it was unbelievable. Lord Feng, Ling Fifan is only at the 2nd step. It's impossible for him to do that. Feng Qing shook her head. Although Ling Fifan is not a concern, his grandfather Ling Han had many friends in the past, many of whom were at the 4th step. You mean a 4th-step powerhouse made a move? Feng Qing nodded. Let's go and see. I know the place. Someone volunteered. He had once followed Ling Fifan to Ling Han's place. However, these people did not dare to violate the rules of the campsite too much and barge into someone else's stone house to commit murder. Otherwise, they would have all died long ago. Lead the way. This time the crowd was very angry. At least a few hundred people set out together. Although most of them were at the 2nd step. With so many people setting out together, it could be said to be a great momentum. Wherever they went, other forces were alarmed. Why does the Wind Alliance want to start a war? Of course, our White Alliance is not much inferior. The Tiger Alliance is fearless. It had to be said that the Wind Alliance was the strongest among all the forces. Not only did they have the most people, but their leader, Feng Wuting, was also the son of destiny and had outstanding combat strength. Moreover, Feng Wuting had 5 7-step supreme martial artists behind him. Which force could compare to them? The Lin clan was considered powerful, but they only had 3 7-step experts and 1 7-step expert. Now that the Wind Alliance looked like they were going to war, how could they not panic? Fortunately, these people from the Wind Alliance did not go to any force's territory. They just passed by and did not enter. Instead, they went to an inconspicuous corner. Where were they going? What were they doing? Many forces were curious and followed them to see what was going on. Soon, the people from the Wind Alliance arrived in front of Ling Han's stone house. Feng Qing nodded to someone and said, "Go and knock on the door." "Yes, Lord." It was a second step expert. He quickly answered respectfully and ran to knock on the door. The person inside, "Listen up. Hurry and come out." The second step expert shouted. Ling Han laid down a restriction in the stone house to isolate the sound. Only then did he open the door and walk out. The moment he saw him, Feng Qing's pupils shrank into small dots. Boom! A powerful aura rippled around him uncontrollably. Feng Qing had naturally heard of Ling Han's monstrous talent. Even a seventh step supreme had been captured by him and made a prisoner. Although Golden Silkworm had escaped later on, it could not conceal Ling Han's strength. Fortunately, Ling Han had courted death himself and entered the forbidden area of the previous Yuan world. That was a place that even a seventh step expert could not enter. There had been no news of him for hundreds of billions of years, so he must have died. Thus, although Feng Qing sighed ruefully, he was still glad that this monster had finally disappeared. But now that he saw Ling Han walk out alive, how could he not be shocked to the point of panic? "Was it you who killed Huang Feng?" The second step expert did not recognize Ling Han and asked loudly. Ling Han nodded and said, "That's right, I killed him." Hearing Ling Han admit it, Yilong cried out in grief and anger. He hurriedly jumped out and pointed at Ling Han, saying, "You bastard, you've caused me so much trouble." Look, he was still covered in blood. Ling Han was shocked. Why did this guy jump out and say he was innocent? Even with his extraordinary strength, he could not have imagined that there would be such twists and turns. Ling Han did not pay attention to him and only looked at Feng Qing. After so many years, he finally saw this old bastard again. Chapter 3003. Back then, Feng Qing and Jiu Wu were high above him, looking down on him like they were gods. They could kill him if they wanted to and saw him as an ant. But now, even though Feng Qing had advanced to the fourth step, which was shockingly fast, in front of Ling Han, so what? He was no stronger than an ant. What about the others? What did you do to them? The second step cultivator was still asking. Ling Han smiled faintly and said casually, "I killed them all." Killed them all? Everyone froze at first. Then they didn't believe it. What kind of joke was this? How could more than 20 celestial venerables die so quietly? Then there would definitely be a huge battle that would alert the entire camp. Who do you think you are? A venerable of the seventh step? But not everyone recognized Ling Han, especially those from the current Yuan world. The number of people who didn't recognize Ling Han could be counted on one's fingers. He was a peerless monster. Immediately, everyone started whispering among themselves. Most of them were so shocked that their scalps went numb. One should know that 500 billion years ago, Ling Han already had the strength of a venerable of the seventh step. How strong would he be now? Because Ling Han was too powerful, no one dared to make a loud noise. They basically communicated with their consciousness, in case they accidentally said something wrong and angered this guy. Just listen, Ling Han had just admitted to killing many people from the Wind Alliance. Yilong immediately jumped up and shouted, "You madman, watch as I suppress you." Even though he was the one who was wronged, in order to raise his position in the Wind Alliance, he naturally didn't hesitate to jump out. Moreover, Ling Han was the main culprit who had wronged him. He naturally wanted to give Ling Han a good thrashing, or even kill him as soon as possible. Though the majority of the people of this era's origin world recognized Ling Han, there were also a few exceptions. And this Yilong was precisely one of those few. Everyone looked at him and shook their heads. Was he looking to die? He actually dared to provoke that malefic star. Ling Han smiled. "You want to suppress me? Are you afraid?" Yilong coldly said. In truth, he knew that he was not a match for Ling Han. That was because the method Ling Han used on Huang Feng was something he was unable to replicate. But isn't there a Feng Qing behind it? He was clearly no match for them. But he still jumped out. Wasn't this a display of loyalty? Ling Han nodded. "All right, go ahead. However, let me say this first. I am a person who distinguishes kindness and grudges clearly. If others don't provoke me, I won't provoke them. However, if anyone provokes me, I will return the favor 100 times, 1,000 times over. Therefore you will die. Haha, what an arrogant tone. Do you think you're a seventh-step supreme being? Yilong sneered. He leapt out and attacked Ling Han. He really did go all out, operating a seventh stream symbol. In his hands, he also brandished a great banner. This was an Empyrean precious artifact, releasing terrifying power. Everyone shook their heads. This monster Ling Han was not just a seventh-step supreme being. He had even suppressed a seventh-step supreme being before. You're using an egg to smash a rock. You don't know how embarrassing your death will be. However, the people of the Wind Alliance did not recognize Ling Han. Seeing Yilong erupt with such a powerful attack, they couldn't help but be excited. They all cheered for Yilong. Boom. Yilong had already charged in front of Ling Han. He had not thought of killing Ling Han. Putting aside the fact that he knew his strength was not enough, even if he had the strength, he would not do such a thing. The camp forbade killing, and he had his misgivings. Thus, although this attack was vicious, it left a lot of leeway. Ling Han attacked. Pung pung pung. Yilong's attacks all bounced off, appearing incomparably weak. In the midst of Yilong's shock, he saw Ling Han's large hand reach straight in, and had already gripped his neck. He was instantly lifted up by Ling Han like a duck. He could only weakly struggle with his four limbs. Seeing this scene, the people of the Wind Alliance all opened their mouths wide. They had cheered for Yilong for so long, yet this was the result. This was too embarrassing. The others were not surprised at all. Ling Han could even take down a seventh-step supreme martial artist, let alone a mere three-step supreme martial artist. Ling Han looked at Yilong and asked, "Do you regret it or not?" Although Yilong was shocked, thinking that there was still Feng Qing behind him, his courage was naturally boosted. He believed that Feng Qing would definitely act to save him. Thus he said very arrogantly, "Buhui, don't be too arrogant, you." Pung. Before he had finished speaking, his whole person had already turned into a cloud of bloody mist. Ling Han retracted his hand indifferently. Bloody mist splattered everywhere, but not a single bit stuck to his body. Slivers of life essence surged into his body, but it was pitifully little, unable to cause even the slightest ripple. It looked like if he wanted to show him an obvious improvement, he would probably have to kill a seventh-step supreme martial artist. But a seventh-step undying and indestructible could not be killed at all. Thus this path was definitely broken. Unless he could be like Frenzy and directly engulf the plane. Yilong's remnant soul danced in the air, and very soon, it would dissipate and disperse. He looked at Feng Qing, full of resentment and disbelief. Just now, Feng Qing actually did not even have the intention to act to save him. He had died too unjustly. Speaking of which, he was definitely the biggest sucker in history today. Previously, he had already been treated as a murderer, and was almost beaten to death. Now he was rushing to the front in a rush, not even knowing who his opponent was. How unjustly had he died? But no matter how unjustly he had died, so what? Very soon he completely disappeared. Seeing a three-step supreme martial artist turn into a rain of blood, everyone was shocked. Ling Han actually dared to kill someone in the campsite. Hiss! No matter how strong Ling Han was, there was a bottom line that could not be crossed, and that was to destroy the most basic unity of the campsite. Killing people was definitely not allowed. Yet Ling Han did not take it to heart at all. With his current strength, did he still need to care about any rules? He had already said it clearly. If anyone dared to act against him, he would definitely return it 100-fold, 1,000-fold. If anyone dared to act again, they would have to bear the consequences. Feng Qing, are you going to kill yourself? Or do you want me to send you on your way? Ling Han looked at Feng Qing. This was one of the people on his must-kill list. Feng Qing only felt aggrieved. Back then, this brat who was not even worth mentioning in front of him, was now in control of his life and death. He did not think that he would be able to escape with his life, when his combat strength was at level 7. And if he knew that 9-5 Heavenly Lord had also been asked the same question by Ling Han, he did not know if he would empathize with Ling Han, or if he would be seething with anger. He did not make a sound, and instead looked coldly at Ling Han. At this moment, no matter what he did, it was useless. The initiative was in Ling Han's hands. Hee Ling Han, how impressive of you. With a cold laugh, a powerful aura surged, and a young man in fluttering white robes walked out. Indefinite wind. Chapter 3005. A beautiful romance. Ling Han did not stop attacking, but he did not use his full power. He wanted Feng Qing to die in despair and helplessness, so that she could take her last breath. Just how arrogant had this bastard been? This was retribution. Ling Han, stop. Xian Chihu shouted. He was the first to attack, and he joined forces with Feng Wuting to stop Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly. He increased his power slightly and blocked the two prodigies, while his other hand continued to attack Feng Qing. Fuck. Seeing this scene, everyone's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. It was fine if they did not understand the battle prowess of someone at the 7th step, but anyone with eyes could easily see that Ling Han was more than capable of fighting 1 against 2. Otherwise, why would he have the leisure to attack Feng Qing? Feng Wuting and Xian Chihu roared angrily. They used their full strength, but it was useless. In front of Ling Han's peak 7th step strength, even though it was only the late stage of 7th step strength, the difference was still huge. Pooh! Feng Qing suffered this attack, and blood spurted from all over his body. He could only exhale, not inhale. If he suffered another attack, he would definitely die. Brother Ling, don't make a big mistake. Ling Yulian also rushed over. In her heart, Ling Han's importance far surpassed Feng Qing's. In fact, she did not even know who Feng Qing was. But it was precisely because she valued Ling Han that she could not let Ling Han make a big mistake. Otherwise, if he violated his principles, no one would be able to protect him. However, what she did not know was that Ling Han had already started a massacre long ago. Wu Haoyang also attacked. The 4 prodigies at the 7th step joined forces to fight Ling Han. Boom boom boom. The 4 prodigies joined forces and finally managed to stop Ling Han. But this was only barely enough to fight Ling Han to a draw. It was still not safe enough. Ling Han almost broke through the encirclement several times, causing their blockade to fail. Big brother, I'm sorry. White Rice cried out and joined the battle. He didn't want Ling Han to stand against everyone. After all, Ling Han wasn't in the 7th step. If he provoked all the 7th step cultivators, he would definitely die. Therefore, he must stop Ling Han from killing. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face as his battle intent finally rose. 5 of the greatest heaven's favorites of all eternity had the battle prowess of the late stage of 7th step. They were finally qualified to make him show his true strength. Come! He laughed heartily as the 7th tier runes began to revolve, instantly increasing his strength by 2,000 times. Pung pung pung. He clashed head-on with Xian Chihu and the other 4. Under the protection of the power of the plane, the recoil was unable to affect his body at all. His body was like 7 steps, indestructible and indestructible. Xian Chihu and the others couldn't take it anymore. They hurriedly activated their strongest heavenly venerate symbols and returned the favor to Ling Han. Suppress! Feng Wuting roared. He unleashed his plane, which formed a powerful pressure. 100 low-level planes appeared at the same time, forming a terrifying pressure. Even Xian Chihu and the others were slightly affected. Ling Han smiled. Since you've released it, don't take it back. He launched a powerful attack, waving his fists and releasing all his strength. With his current defenses, the pressure from the group of planes couldn't affect him in the slightest. He forcefully grabbed a plane and tried to snatch it. Feng Wuting was shocked and furious. If his plane was really snatched away by Ling Han, he would lose it forever. He hurriedly used his full strength to try to take back the plane. Wishful thinking, Ling Han said coldly. Terrifying power surged, and he forcefully compressed the plane until it was only the size of a palm. He grabbed it and threw it out with great force. Bang! The plane attacked Feng Qing as fast as a beam of light. Feng Qing was shocked, and his eyes widened involuntarily as fear appeared in his eyes. If this attack hit him, he would die without a doubt. He didn't want to die. After so many years of bitter cultivation, he had only used a little more than an epoch to go from the 1st step to the 4th step. His talent was truly astonishing. He had even greater hopes for himself. Perhaps he could reach the 5th step, or even the 6th step. But if he was hit by this attack, all of that would be for naught. Putting aside the fact that he was already heavily injured, even if his battle prowess was at its peak, how would he be able to dodge or parry the attack of a 7th step cultivator? He could only place his hopes on Feng Wuding and the others. But could Feng Wuding and the others stop him? They couldn't. This attack was as fast as flowing light, and Ling Han took the initiative to attack. He had all 5 powerful cultivators tied down, so they had no time to attack. Bang! The plane crushed over, and Feng Qing was directly pulverized. The plane crashed into the city wall, and the defenses that could block an attack from a 6th step cultivator were instantly destroyed. A giant hole appeared, and the plane also shattered into a dozen or so pieces, which continued to move forward. Because of the destruction, the core of the plane went berserk, and the plane started to expand. How big was the lower high-level plane? Boom! As he charged forward, it was truly as though the heavens were falling, and the earth was splitting apart. Coincidentally, Madness's camp was in that direction. What was a distance of 10,000 miles? In less than a breath's time, these massive plane fragments had already arrived. Those heavenly venerable monsters were completely unprepared, and the disaster of annihilation had already arrived. With just one attack, this camp was no more, and who knew how many members of Madness' army had died or been injured? And the remaining plane fragments continued to fly forward, not entering the area controlled by Madness. What kind of damage would this cause was something that Madness had to worry about. On the Xuanma Plains side, everyone was tongue-tied, shocked by Ling Han. First, it was because Ling Han was so powerful that even the 5 7th step cultivators were unable to stop him from killing people. Second, it was because Ling Han was too audacious. As long as one was not at the 7th step, one was not truly invincible. He actually dared to kill people in the camp, and not just one at that. This time he was in deep trouble. Who could protect him? Feng Wuding's expression was cold, and he no longer attacked. Feng Qing was already dead, and it seemed that even the 5 powerhouses working together couldn't suppress Ling Han. What was the point of fighting? He pointed at Ling Han and said, "You've already caused a great disaster. Are you going to kneel and be bound, or do you want us to do it?" Ling Han smiled. "I don't intend to be bound, nor will I be restrained. I still want to kill someone." He stared closely at Feng Wuding as he said that. He had endured this fellow for long enough. He was definitely going to kill him today. Feng Wuding was startled, and then he laughed heartily. "Ling Han, you think too highly of yourself. You still want to kill me?" "If I wanted to, you'd be a dead man," said Ling Han indifferently, full of confidence. "Ling Han, not only did you openly kill people in the camp, but you also destroyed the city's defenses. What kind of crime is that?" Feng Wuding continued to criticize him. On the other hand, Lin Yulian and the others didn't say anything. As if to annotate his words, boundless killing intent surged over, and a large number of Madness soldiers surged over. End of chapter. Chapter 3006. Everyone was shocked. The crazy army was actually killing their way over. This was too sudden. Moreover, their city walls had been destroyed, and their defensive power had been greatly reduced. Moreover, there was a new type of monster in the Frenzy army that could self-destruct at any time and unleash a destructive power at the peak of level 7. Whether it was to people or the environment, it would cause terrifying damage. In order to deal with this kind of monster, one had to discover it from a very far distance, and then use a long-range attack to cause it to self-destruct. This kind of monster's destructive power was astonishing, but its defense was extremely weak. Even a 2-step or 3-step could easily kill it. Therefore, if they were discovered and destroyed in advance, then this monster would explode in the Frenzy army, causing great damage to them. The problem was that it was too difficult to discover them. Moreover, these monsters were hidden in the sea of frenzied troops. It was almost impossible to destroy them in advance. Now the soldiers were at the gates. "Meet the enemy." Lin Yulian, Xian Qihu, and the others gave the order. Feng Wuding looked at Ling Han and said sternly, "Look at what you've done. Oomph. Even if you're at the 7th step, you can't do as you please." He was going all out to accuse Ling Han of a crime. Otherwise, with the combat strength of a level 7 cultivator, he would naturally try his best to preserve his strength and defend against frenzy. Therefore, they had to convict Ling Han of a crime that he couldn't escape, even if he made a great contribution. For example, in this current situation, if countless Empyreans died because of Ling Han, then even Lin Luo and Zhou Heng wouldn't be able to open their mouths to protect them. Otherwise, just Feng Qing's death wouldn't be enough. Ling Han smiled faintly. "Of course I did. I lured the entire Frenzy army over and wiped them out." "You really are Frenzy's subordinate." Feng Wuding gritted his teeth. This was a serious crime. Once it was confirmed that Ling Han was Frenzy's subordinate, all of the 7th step would do their best to kill him. "Trash, barking all day long," Ling Han sneered. "Fine. I'll deal with those ugly guys outside first, then I'll take your head." He charged out. Right now, Ling Han didn't need to worry about anything. Even if the 7 steps joined hands to suppress him, he wouldn't be afraid. However, he wasn't someone who didn't have a bottom line and couldn't distinguish right from wrong. Of course they had to kill Feng Wuding, but they definitely couldn't let the entire stronghold perish with him. There was no rush. In any case, Drifting Wind couldn't run away. He was facing the Frenzy army, which was charging at him like a tsunami. Earlier, he had used the plane to kill at least 90% of the army of Delirium. However, even if only 10% remained, it was still a shocking number. They blotted out the sky and covered the earth, forming a dense black mass. Ling Han was calm and collected. He stretched out his right hand, and Wang, a stream of power condensed, turning into a sphere of light that flickered with a strange light, like rippling water. "Go!" He casually waved a ball of light. The ball of light shot out with incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached the deranged army. The monsters wanted to slap it with their claws, but the balls of light seemed to have grown eyes. They jumped around agilely, unable to be intercepted at all. The ball of light didn't stop until it reached the depths of the army of chaos. "Explode," Ling Han said softly. Boom! Suddenly, the ball of light exploded, and a terrifying explosion of energy swept out in all directions. Bang, bang, bang. Wherever the energy storm passed, the deranged army was annihilated. So what if they were at the 6th step? They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Ling Han's hands kept moving as he tossed out one ball of light after another. This was the condensation of the power of all his planes, which was equivalent to the bombardment of a small origin world. Of course, its power was terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. The deranged army was instantly annihilated. In particular, one of the balls of light even killed an explosive monster, causing this monster to also erupt with the destructive power of a peak 7th step. The two energy storms at the peak of 7th step collided with each other, either annihilating or strengthening each other, resulting in an even more terrifying destructive effect. After Ling Han tossed out several hundred balls of light, the entire deranged army was left with less than 1,000 of them. Then Ling Han pointed out and killed one with a flick of his finger. In an instant, all of them fell from the sky. At this point, the deranged army had been completely annihilated. Not a single one of them managed to reach the top of the stronghold. For a moment, everyone was silent. They only knew how to look at Ling Han in shock. Among the heroes of the world, who else could it be but him? It was just one person. But with a wave of his hand, millions of deranged army soldiers had been annihilated. He was like a divine needle that stabilized the sea, an immovable mountain. As long as he was here, would there still be a need for walls? One person was equivalent to thousands of soldiers and horses. Unlike venerables of the 7th step, if they fought here, venerables of the 7th step would break the rules. They themselves would cause destruction to heaven and earth, which was equivalent to helping the deranged army. Thus, on this level of the battlefield, Lin Yulian, Feng Wuding, and the others with battle prowess at the 7th step were more practical than true venerables of the 7th step, even if their strength was inferior. And Ling Han was even more amazing. He had single-handedly taken care of an entire army. There really was no one else like him. Ling Han turned around and faced the people within the walls. His green robe fluttered as if he was about to leave with the wind. There was silence. No one could speak. Their divine souls had all been seized. Ling Han, you're just... Boom. Feng Wuting was just about to reprimand him when thunderous cheers erupted. Everyone seemed to have gone crazy, looking at Ling Han with fanatical gazes. At this moment, they all regarded Ling Han as a god that could save them. One person stood proudly, accepting the cheers of thousands of heavenly venerables. In comparison, whether it was Lin Yulian, Wu Haoyang, Xian Chihu, Feng Wuting, or Bai Mi, they all paled in comparison. This was like comparing a stubborn stone to a precious jade. With a single glance, one could tell who was more dazzling. At the borders, Ling Han alone was enough. When Feng Wuting saw this, he could not help but feel endless jealousy. He was the son of destiny. He was the one receiving the cheers and admiration of thousands of people should be him, not Ling Han. However, the people of the current origin world were filled with fanaticism toward Ling Han. Even those seeds from the previous generation were the same. They no longer looked at him, the Alliance Master of the Wind Alliance. He gritted his teeth in hatred, his eyes spitting fire. With such a great contribution, with such a great role, who would agree to execute Ling Han? Could it be that he would have to bear such a huge mountain for the rest of his life? Could it be that he would have to live in Ling Han's shadow forever? He wanted to kill. Ling Han pressed his hand down, and everyone's voices instantly fell silent. They all looked up at him, their eyes shining with fanaticism. It was as if they would be willing to attack Madness's headquarters for Ling Han, as long as he gave the order. They were not afraid at all. This made Feng Wuting almost die of anger. He had relied on his identity as the son of destiny and the prestige of 5 7th-step supremes, but he had only managed to make the seeds of the previous generation of the origin world unite around him and listen to his orders. But look at Ling Han. With just one battle, he had become the undisputed leader. End of chapter. Chapter 3007. Ling Han stared coldly at Feng Wuting. Feng Wuting naturally wouldn't back down, and he met Ling Han's gaze as well. The two men staring at each other affectionately might cause the ignorant masses to think that there was some sort of indescribable affair going on between them. But just by looking at their killing intent, it was obvious that there was only one kind of relationship between the two, life and death enemies. Feng Wuting, I told you that you're going to die today, Ling Han said calmly. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Killing Feng Qing, Yilong, Huang Feng, and so on was a huge crime. But Ling Han had displayed enough power that he had the privilege of transcending the rules. A person who could destroy Frenzy's army with a wave of his hand was too important. He wasn't someone who could be traded for with a few steps. However, Indefinite Wind was different. He was the child of destiny, and he had obtained the inheritance of the previous Yuan world. He was the key to destroying Frenzy. One could only resist Frenzy, while the other could destroy it. Who was more important? Thus, if Ling Han really wanted to kill Feng Wuting, then it would be a serious matter. Lin Yulian and the others wouldn't allow Ling Han to do that. They would do everything they could to stop him. You think you're worthy? Feng Wuting said arrogantly. Ling Han shook his head. What bullshit child of destiny? He had long since stopped believing that Feng Wuting was some child of destiny, because there was nothing special about him. That's right. 100 existential planes were indeed enough to crush any prodigy. For example, Lin Yulian and the others had only opened up 2 existential planes within their bodies. But compared to Ling Han, 100 existential planes were practically trash. Even if Feng Wuting reached 7 steps, would he be able to match Frenzy? Impossible. It was simple. Frenzy had never stopped cultivating, and it was constantly devouring planes. Its strength was constantly increasing. What made Feng Wuting think that his cultivation speed could surpass Frenzy's? Everyone else's cultivation had a limit, which was why they could surpass it. But against an existence that had no limit and was constantly improving, how could they surpass it? This was also a child of destiny. Tui, how dare you slander me? Feng Wuting said coldly. He had had enough of Ling Han. Bullshit. Let's see what the heavens will do after I kill you, said Ling Han indifferently. His figure flashed as he charged at Feng Wuting. Now it was Feng Wuting's turn. Feng Wuting naturally had no choice but to accept the challenge. He wasn't a 7-step undying body, so how could he allow Ling Han to randomly attack him? Battle unfortunately. Once Ling Han got serious, how could Feng Wuting possibly be a match for him? He was quickly suppressed, and it was only a matter of time before he was killed. Ling Han, Xi and Chihu, and the other Stage 7 experts hurriedly attacked Ling Han to reduce the pressure on Feng Wuting. Ling Han harumphed and circulated his planar power, turning it into an invincible defense. He then ignored Xi and Chihu and the others' attacks, and focused on Feng Wuting. Xi and Chihu and the others didn't know that Ling Han's defense was already at the 7th step. When they saw that he was actually letting them attack him, they couldn't help but pull back and send their attacks elsewhere. What surprised Ling Han was that while he could understand why Lin Yulian, White Rice, and Wu Haoyang had pulled back at the brink of death, Xi and Chihu had also forcefully pulled back. That was very strange. It was too strange. However, even though the 4 of them had pulled back, some of their attacks had still landed on Ling Han's body. After all, a Stage 7 expert's attacks were too fast. How could they all be pulled back? But when these attacks landed on Ling Han's body, they didn't even injure a single hair on Ling Han's body. However, they still had some effect. After all, this was the power of a Stage 7 expert. It slightly slowed down Ling Han's charging speed, giving Feng Wuting a chance to retreat. What? Lin Yulian and the others were all shocked. Even if only a small part of their attacks had landed on Ling Han, a Stage 7 expert was still a Stage 7 expert. How could they take their attacks head-on? However, Ling Han acted as if nothing had happened. What the hell was going on? A Stage 7 expert's defense. Xi and Chihu said word by word. Although Lin Yulian and the others didn't want to believe it, the facts spoke louder than words. Heavens! It was already inconceivable for a Stage 5 Heavenly Venerable to have a Stage 7 expert's battle prowess. But he actually had a Stage 7 physique. Was this still a Stage 5 expert? Hiss! Now Ling Han really had the confidence to ignore the rules. So what if he was lawless? He was unkillable and indestructible. Who could punish him? Not only them, but the surrounding onlookers were also so shocked that their scalps went numb. How could Ling Han be so strong? Even Feng Wuting, who considered himself to be extraordinary, felt a strong chill in his heart. He was facing a true Stage 7 expert. His strength and defense had reached the peak of the world. He couldn't be killed or injured. He could only be abused by his opponent. This kind of battle was simply unfair. Ling Han only stared at Feng Wuting and said indifferently, "Who else wants to stop me? Brother Ling, please reconsider. Feng Wuting is the previous origin world's child of destiny. It's very likely that he's the key to eliminating madness," Lin Yulian said seriously. Of course, she still wanted to persuade him. This time, she wasn't worried about Ling Han's safety. Instead, she was worried about the big picture. Ling Han laughed. This so-called child of destiny is only what Chong Yan and the others said. I'm full of doubts about their words. A mighty Stage 7 supremacy would actually lie. Through his own observations and the words of the world will, he was sure that Feng Wuting was definitely not a child of destiny. Chong Yan and the others were very likely hiding their little secrets. Even the Stage 7 experts had to keep their mouths shut. Their schemes might be shocking. Big brother, let's stop. White Rice also advised. Ling Han shook his head and pointed at Feng Wuting. I said that I would definitely kill him today. Feng Wuting was enraged. Did Ling Han really think that he was a meat bun? He snorted. Ling Han, do you think it's that easy to kill me? You'll naturally know after you die, Ling Han said calmly. The current Feng Wuting was no longer worthy of being called his opponent. From the very beginning, he had never taken Feng Wuting seriously. He charged out and swung his fists, furiously attacking Feng Wuting. Feng Wuting, Lin Yulian, and the others hurriedly acted. 5 Stage 7 experts once again joined forces to stop Ling Han. But could they really stop him? This time, Xi and Chihu and the others naturally didn't have any misgivings. They all went all out. But after exchanging a few blows, they finally understood why the Stage 7 experts were so powerful. Undying, indestructible. Their attacks only caused sparks to fly when they landed on Ling Han's body. They couldn't injure Ling Han at all. However, they had to neutralize Ling Han's attacks. Otherwise, they would be heavily injured if they were even grazed by them. This kind of battle was too unfair. Ling Han only needed to attack and unleash his full strength, while Feng Wuting and the others could only defend. It was extremely miserable. Chapter 2, Breaking Through Theft. Chapter 3009. What a good story. Chong Yan's group of 5 was filled with disbelief. Possessing battle prowess at level 7 was already unprecedented, but at least there was still Feng Wuting who could match it. But now, Ling Han actually possessed the defense of level 7. This was terrifying. This meant that Ling Han had truly stepped into the ranks of big shots. From now on, he would be undying and indestructible. He didn't need to take anyone seriously, or take them seriously. Even if the origin world was destroyed and chaos unified the world, he wouldn't die. He could live freely. At this level, what was there to be afraid of? Ah! Feng Wuting screamed. Chong Yan's group of 5 looked over. They did not care about Feng Wuting's injuries. After all, this attack had not struck his sea of consciousness, so his life would not be in danger. Thus, when they heard Feng Wuting's screams, they felt some disdain. In any case, you have battle prowess at level 7. Is it proper for you to scream like this? But when they saw Feng Wuting's appearance, they could not help but be shocked. Feng Wuting's entire body was glowing, as if there was a small sun inside his body. This was not something he had activated. Rather, the power of Ling Han's attack had not dissipated, and was now wreaking havoc inside his body. Ah! Feng Wuting screamed again. His limbs were straight, and his mouth was wide open. Boom! Pillars of light shot out of his 7 apertures and endless power surged out. His skin was visibly splitting open, and blood was spurting out. No! Chong Yan's group of 5 was shocked. They could sense that Feng Wuting's life essence was boiling, rushing to an inconceivable height. This was extremely abnormal. At their level, everything was within their control. Now his life essence was boiling, even more vigorous than the 5 of them combined. This was not because Feng Wuting's strength had skyrocketed to an inconceivable level, but because his bodily functions were in great disorder. He had lost control of his body at level 7 battle prowess? There was only one possibility. Feng Wuting was about to die, which was why he had lost control. They had placed too much hope in Feng Wuting, and it was not as simple as him destroying chaos. If Feng Wuting died, their hopes would naturally be dashed. The 5 of them hurriedly pressed their palms against Feng Wuting's body, in an attempt to forcibly suppress the disorder in his body. However, when they pressed their palms against Feng Wuting's body, they were shocked to discover that Feng Wuting's body was only empty and chaotic. The emptiness was because all the organs in his body had been destroyed, and the chaos was because the power in his body was boiling, wreaking havoc and surging. The 5 of them hurriedly poured their power into Feng Wuting's sea of consciousness. Then, all of them revealed despondent expressions. This was because Feng Wuting's sea of consciousness had already been destroyed, and his soul had been obliterated as well. Only a strand of it remained, and it was still putting up a last-ditch struggle. But no matter what, Feng Wuting's death was already a foregone conclusion. If he did not have such a high cultivation level, and was only an immortal king, those 5 supremes could still defy the heavens and change his fate, forcefully extending his life. But now it was impossible. Empyreans were loathed by the heavens and earth. If they died, they died. There was no second chance. Save me, save me. Feng Wuting wasn't completely dead yet. There was still a remnant of his soul floating around, and it was trembling as it extended a hand toward the 5 sovereigns. It was filled with a thirst for life. Chong Yan and the others were indifferent, and they completely ignored him. Feng Wuting was extremely important when he was alive, but if he was dead, who would care about him? Did he really think that Chong Yan and the others treasured him so much because they loved him? Facing the incomparably cold expressions of Chong Yan and the others, Feng Wuting was filled with despair, and there was even a kind of resentment. Why didn't you save me? Why? He looked at Ling Han again. This person had said that he would kill him today, and it was clear that Ling Han had done it. He was filled with unwillingness. He was a supreme prodigy. So why did the heavens have to give birth to a Ling Han to compete with him? Moreover, he had even died in Ling Han's hands. If he had another chance, would he still become enemies with Ling Han? In reality, was there really an irreconcilable grudge between the two of them? Feng Wuding asked himself honestly, and he discovered that his grudge with Ling Han had been completely instigated by him. Moreover, Ling Han had let him off time and time again, only plundering his body. He regretted it, but this also became his final thought. Pung, his body exploded, and his remnant soul also turned to ash, disappearing. Instantly, a shocking amount of life essence surged toward Ling Han, transforming into majestic energy. Brat! Chongyin glared at Ling Han, his killing intent boiling. I'm not deaf, I can hear you. I can hear you, Ling Han said indifferently. His body was passively absorbing that energy, causing his cultivation to rise significantly. Feng Wuding was equivalent to a 7th-step heavenly venerable. You've ruined our hopes. Even if we crush you into pieces, it won't be able to pacify the hatred in our hearts, Skybreaker said. His black hair curled around his head, and he was infuriated to the point of insanity. Previously, his avatar had been destroyed by Ling Han, and although he was also furious, it couldn't be compared to what he was feeling now. Ling Han chuckled. Which one of you is Feng Wuding's illegitimate child? But looking at how nervous you all are, it seems like all of you are his biological father. You're courting death. Heavenly Venerable Skybreaker roared angrily, and took the initiative to attack. Boom! He unleashed a boundless power that blasted toward Ling Han. Ling Han let out a long howl, and didn't show any weakness as he began to clash with Heavenly Venerable Skybreaker. Pung pung pung. Space continuously exploded. The collision of peak 7th-step Heavenly Venerables had incomparably terrifying destructive power. Xiao xiao xiao, several more figures rushed over. They were naturally Lin Luo, Zhou Heng, and the other 7th-step Supremes. When they saw that Ling Han was currently engaged in a fierce battle with Skybreaker, their eyes all widened slightly. Ling Han could actually match the battle prowess of a peak 7th-step Heavenly Venerable? This was too inconceivable. This brat clearly hadn't advanced to the 7th step. So how could his physique be so powerful that he could forcibly contend against a 7th-step Heavenly Venerable? A giant. Another giant had appeared among them. He was undying and indestructible, and could exist for eternity. No existence could kill him, and it was impossible for him to even commit suicide. Meanwhile, Golden Silkworm's expression was strange. Its mouth was half open, and its heart was filled with complicated feelings. He had been suppressed by Ling Han, and this was a humiliation that could never be washed away. But now his battle prowess was only at the middle stage of the 7th step, while Ling Han was at the peak stage of the 7th step. The only thing that he was proud of, his physique, had also been caught up by Ling Han. Was there still a chance for revenge? A 7th step Heavenly Venerable should have been able to look down on the world and be omnipotent. This kind of helplessness made him extremely speechless. Boom! Just at this moment, an even more powerful aura appeared. It far surpassed any 7th step Heavenly Venerable, and even all 7th steps added together couldn't compare. Frenzy had appeared. There was no one to restrain it, so it naturally had to seize the opportunity to push its way over. Shwa! It flung out a tentacle that whipped toward the crowd. This was practically a super high-level existential plane swatting over. No, it wasn't just one but several. The end of this chapter. Chapter 30:10. Lin Luo and the others hurriedly parried the attack. 8 studies. At the same time, Xi and Chihu and the other 6 steps started to run. They didn't even have the courage to block one move. It wasn't that they lacked courage. Rather, if they were to take this attack head-on, they would undoubtedly die. Frenzy's strength had already surpassed the peak of the 7th step. It could even be considered the 8th step. Without an indestructible body, if one tried to fight against it head-on, one would definitely die. Empyrean Sundermount acted as if he hadn't seen it. He continued to stare at Ling Han as he madly attacked. He knew that he could not kill Ling Han, but his boundless hope was suddenly shattered. How could he suppress the anger in his heart? In any case, he had an indestructible body. So what if he was willful? Moreover, since hope had been extinguished, how could he have the mood to fight against madness? Who cares if your Yuan world collapses or not? What does that have to do with me? Bam! When Frenzy's attack fell, all the 7 steps were sent flying. No one could take him head-on. After devouring the Frostfire plane, Frenzy's strength had reached a level where he could crush all the 7 steps. Pooh! Ling Han couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't help but be overwhelmed with shock. The defensive layer that he had cultivated could withstand hundreds of attacks from 7 steps, but it had already been shattered by this frenzied attack. The strength of Frenzy was unimaginable. Poy's gaze swept over. He couldn't help but reveal a cold smile. So, you aren't truly undying and indestructible. He had also taken a blow from Frenzy, but he was only sent flying. He was not injured at all. But Ling Han? His face turned pale, and he even vomited blood. This was definitely not a true undying body. I understand now. It's just that your defensive power is extremely strong. As long as you don't break through the limits of this layer, you'll be able to replenish it endlessly. However, as long as your strength is overwhelming, this layer of defense won't be able to withstand a single blow. Heavenly Lord Sunderpeak said. His words were basically spot on, as expected of a 7th-step supreme being. Since you don't have an undying body, then you can die. Empyrean Sundermount slaughtered his way over again. His hands hacked out, condensing 6 types of intrinsic powers, turning them into unstoppable sharp blades. Ling Han snorted and waved his fist angrily. Boom! The 2 of them clashed, creating a powerful shockwave, but neither of them was injured at all. Ling Han had already set up his defenses again. Such a collision was nothing to him. Heavenly Venerate Sundermount's eyes narrowed. Although he had seen through the weakness of Ling Han's defense, seeing through it was one thing. Whether or not he could break it was another matter. To be honest, he couldn't break it. But Frenzy could. He immediately had an idea. When Frenzy struck again, he would entangle Ling Han, not giving him a chance to escape. Pung! Heavenly Venerate Sundermountain was naturally sent flying by the crushing force. However, not only was Ling Han sent flying, but he was also vomiting blood. He was in a miserable state. Ha ha ha, brat, I'll take your little life. Empyrean Sundermount charged back, his 6 essential energies transforming into a spear that stabbed viciously at Ling Han. Ling Han frowned. He wasn't afraid of Sundermount, but Frenzy's power was far too strong. It had reached the point where it could break through his defenses. Thus, if they fought here, he would be at too much of a disadvantage. He very much wanted to kill Chong Yen and the others, but his physique hadn't truly reached the indestructible tier yet. Even if it was, he wouldn't be able to suppress Chong Yen and the others. Thus, there was no point in continuing to fight. Time to go. At the present stage, he was still focused on increasing his cultivation. As long as he took 6 steps, he would definitely be able to hang on Sundermount and the others. And if he took 7 steps, even if his power wasn't enough to kill them, it would be more than enough to suppress them. Once he made up his mind, he didn't hesitate to turn and leave. Shwa! But Frenzy clearly had plans to kill him here. A long feeler flew over, carrying with it an incomparably terrifying power. Ling Han scurried away, but Sundermount charged out from the side, waving his spear and stabbing at Ling Han. This couldn't hurt him, but it was enough to stop him, allowing Frenzy to swing his true butcher's knife. Fuck, how despicable, Ling Han said in his heart. Sundermount and Frenzy had actually joined forces to harm him. They were really shameless to the extreme. Shwa! A figure appeared, blocking in front of Ling Han. Then he moved to meet Frenzy's attack. Lin Luo. Pung! There was no suspense. Lin Luo was completely unable to block this attack, and he was immediately sent flying. However, after being blocked, the power of this attack was sharply reduced. When it hit Ling Han's body again, its power had already been reduced by a few hundred times. Ling Han was sent flying, but this time, he was completely unharmed. No one else knew. Only Ling Han himself knew that the defensive layer on his body had been weakened by nearly 90%. In other words, Even if the power of frenzy had been reduced by a few hundred times, it still had the ability to threaten him. Senior Lin, Senior Zhou, Senior Chu, I'll take my leave first, Ling Han said. He didn't slow down at all, flying away like lightning. If he stayed here, he would be in great danger. Hand over your life. Heavenly Venerable Sundermount hurriedly chased after him. But he was once again blocked by Lin Luo. Chong Yen and the other three also chased after him. Bai Fan, Xian Fu, and Heavenly Venerable Blood Rainbow joined forces to block the Four Supremes. All of them were undying and indestructible, so they had no qualms about attacking. Myriad Shadows, Golden Silkworm, putting aside the fact that there was still Zhou Heng and Chu Hao to hold him back. Even if there weren't any, would they dare to make a move against Ling Han? This was especially so for Golden Silkworm. The shadow in its heart was as large as a mountain. Myriad Shadow's first reaction upon seeing Ling Han was to turn and run. With this block, Ling Han naturally flew away as if he was flying. Shwa. But the most terrifying thing was still frenzy. A tentacle waved over, and it was more terrifying than anything else. Ling Han didn't take it head-on. He released all his power, allowing him to activate his extreme speed. He ran in front, and behind him, a long tentacle chased after him. It seemed as though there was no limit to it, and it could stretch endlessly until it reached him. The distance between the two sides was gradually decreasing. Whether it was in the void or the plane, frenzy's speed and power were unparalleled in the world. Ling Han's expression didn't change in the slightest. His expression was solemn as he continued to run. In front of him, the passageway to the extraterritorial battlefield had already appeared. As long as he entered that passageway, he would be in the territory of the Xuanma Plain. It would greatly suppress frenzy and greatly weaken its power. At that time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to receive another attack from frenzy. When he was less than 10 miles away from that passageway, frenzy's attack arrived. The tentacles slightly surpassed him, and then fiercely attacked behind him. This attack not only had terrifying power, but it also wanted to send Ling Han into the extraterritorial battlefield. Clearly, frenzy also knew that if Ling Han escaped into the Xuanma Plain, it wouldn't be able to kill this young man. Ling Han didn't enter the void. That was frenzy's main battlefield. Before he could tear open the void again and return, he would definitely be entangled by frenzy until he died. He roared, and his figure hurriedly scurried up. Chapter 30:11. A Beautiful Romance. Ling Han leapt high into the air, and the power of the plane in his body was completely released in an instant, transforming into an even sturdier layer of defense. Even if he had made the most correct response in time, he was still swept by frenzy's tentacles, causing his figure to immediately slant and fly out to the side. Fortunately, he had crashed into the exit of the extraterritorial battlefield. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Just this one attack had caused cracks to appear on his hundreds of thousands of low-level, high-level planes, and they had suffered extremely serious damage. They needed to be repaired immediately, or else they might all collapse. Although he could already endlessly multiply the planes now, how long would it take to nurture so many low-level, high-level planes? The previous origin world had already completely disappeared, so how could there still be so much energy for him to absorb? Shwa, frenzy attacked again, and attacked towards Ling Han. However, this time, Ling Han exploded with power again. Pung! Blazing light surged out of his body, and he flew out of the extraterritorial battlefield in a staggering manner. Frenzy's tentacles flew out, but they were strongly suppressed by the Xianmo plane, and their power instantly decreased explosively. Pung 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 pung. There were still Lin Yulian and the other three great elites at the exit, and they all attacked Frenzy. Originally, they were not Frenzy's match at all, but with the help of the Xianmo plane, the majority of Frenzy's power was suppressed, and only then did they manage to resolve this attack. However, the figures of the four great elites were also sent flying, all of them pale, and their bodies trembled. Quang, furious thunder sounded between heaven and earth, and there was an indescribable power surging. This was the world will of the Xianmo plane. If Frenzy was only an elite, then the world will would only suppress him, and would not be able to directly target him. However, Frenzy was still a plane, and this was different. Planes face planes, and the Xianemo plane could also wield the greatest power. Frenzy did not attack again. His tentacles waved lightly, and then he retreated. He instantly disappeared. Ling Han struggled to get up. At this time, the world will of the Xuanma plane was also starting to dissipate. It almost didn't have any sense of existence. It could only be manifested when it was being bullied by madness. Ling Han possessed the unique power of this plane. Now it had evolved into a lower-level plane. This was inherited from the same source. Therefore, he had obtained a trace of the will of heaven and earth. He wondered, why was the power of the plane only activated when there was a life or death threat? Otherwise, with how much the plane loathed Empyreans, as long as it interfered a little, which Empyrean would be able to achieve the Tao? In the unseen world, there seemed to be something that transcended the rules suppressing the plane, forcing it to act according to some kind of rule. There are rules above rules. Ling Han couldn't help but sink into deep thought. Then what kind of power ensured that the plane operated in such a way? If such a power really existed, wouldn't it be even more powerful? Chong Yen and the other supreme martial artists were already at the peak of the 7th step, and their strength could no longer advance any further. Logically speaking, they should have no more desires, yet they were still so anxious and restless. Why exactly? Don't say that it was just to destroy Frenzy. He didn't believe it. Moreover, Chong Yen and the other supreme martial artists were deliberately hiding it. They must be plotting something, hiding a big secret. What was it? Lin Yulian, Xian Chihu, and the other 2 supreme martial artists also stood up and flew back to their original positions. Their injuries weren't serious, and they were much better off than Ling Han. The 4 great prodigies all looked at Ling Han, their eyes filled with admiration, as well as wariness. Who asked Ling Han to kill Feng Wuding? If he could kill Feng Wuding, he could naturally kill them. The 4 prodigies couldn't help but be wary. Ling Han looked at Xian Chihu and said indifferently, "Little Hu, do you dare to attack?" He was covered in injuries, and his essence, energy, and spirit were very weak. However, his fighting spirit was unwavering. Xian Chihu snorted and waved his hand. "After your injuries are healed, I will consider playing with you. As for now, I can't be bothered to bully an injured person." Fuck, when did this guy become so open and aboveboard? Ling Han was surprised that Xian Chihu would say such a thing. Previously, who had shamelessly forced him to carry out the decapitation plan, who had purposely splashed dirty water on him, and forced him to his death. Xian Chihu's actions were indeed a bit contradictory. Previously, when Ling Han had wanted to kill Feng Wuding, the 4 prodigies had blocked him together, and Ling Han hadn't put up any defenses. The 4 prodigies had all withdrawn their strength, afraid that they would accidentally injure or even kill him. Logically speaking, Xian Chihu shouldn't have been so polite. At this moment, a terrifying aura surged, and a person walked out from the entrance of the extraterritorial battlefield. Thunder Mountain. He immediately stared at Ling Han, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. Very good, this brat was heavily injured. As long as he attacked with his full strength, this brat would have no time to recover. After a long battle, this brat would definitely be exhausted, unable to maintain his defenses, and die at his hands. "Brat, you're dead." Puyu attacked, charging towards Ling Han. "My lord, please show mercy." Lin Yulian, Wu Haoyang, and by me all moved to block Puyu's attack. To Ling Han's surprise, Xian Chihu also moved. Boom! The 4 prodigies weren't Thunder Mountain's match. With just one move, they were all sent flying. There was a huge gap between a late-stage 7th step and a peak 7th step. In terms of physique, the 4 prodigies were even weaker. One attack caused their blood to boil, and it was incomparably uncomfortable. But Thunder Mountain wasn't worried at all. His physique wasn't bad, and he was only stopped for a moment by the power of the 7th step. He immediately attacked again. Ling Han attacked, clashing with Thunder Mountain. A near-invincible defense spread out. As long as it didn't touch Frenzy, no one could break through it, not even a peak 7th step. However, Ling Han had been severely wounded by Frenzy's several attacks, and the planes inside his body had all suffered heavy damage. In the first place, They were in great need of recovery, and under such a fierce battle, the cracks on each plane were becoming deeper and deeper, and were about to shatter into pieces. This couldn't go on. Xiao xiao xiao. At this moment, even more elites appeared. Chong Yen, Big Dipper, Xian Yu and Half Moon, the four paragons, all stared coldly at Ling Han, as if they were looking at a dead man. With Feng Wuting dead, they went crazy, and didn't even care about frenzy anymore. As Ling Han fought, he was still wondering what use Feng Wuting had, and why Chong Yen and the others were so nervous. In terms of killing frenzy, his battle prowess was stronger than Feng Wuting's, so shouldn't he be more valuable? Xiao 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 Lin Luo and the others also appeared. If Chong Yen and the others treasured Feng Wuting, then Lin Luo and the others valued Ling Han immensely. He might be the only candidate to deal with frenzy. Let's go, Lin Luo said to Ling Han. Right now Ling Han was the fuse. As long as he was around, Chong Yen and the others wouldn't give up. Ling Han nodded. He also urgently needed to recuperate. Chapter 30:13. On the surface of the lake, the white-clothed woman and her servant could only hold on to the edge of the boat to stabilize themselves. Otherwise, they would definitely be thrown into the water. It was as if they were experiencing a tsunami. There was nothing else in their minds except for the thought of not falling into the lake. After a long time, perhaps an era, or perhaps just an instant, the lake suddenly calmed down. You scared me to death. The green-clothed woman patted her chest with all her might. She was not at all worried that she would use too much force and flatten the towering peaks. She looked towards the white-clothed woman. Miss, are you all right? The white-clothed woman shook her head. Although she had experienced a storm, her expression was still calm. She looked at the lake. Ever since she was young, she would go on a boat for a while every day. Suddenly, she felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Huh? She suddenly froze and pointed at a certain spot on the lake. Xianyi, look. Is there a person there? Miss, your eyes must be playing tricks on you. How could there be someone here? The green-clothed woman shook her head. She was quite broad-minded and grinned. Other than you, the demons in Heavenly Treasure Lake will not allow outsiders to enter. Once discovered, they will immediately tear you to pieces. A few hundred years ago, Seventh Elder's son wanted to enter the lake without permission to obtain some treasures. In the end, he was torn to pieces. Seventh Elder wanted to start a war. But wasn't he suppressed by Lord Sect Master? Recklessly trespassing into Heavenly Treasure Lake will only result in death. The white-clothed woman naturally knew this. She pointed at the spot just now. Look carefully. The green-clothed woman finally looked again. This time, she was greatly shocked and directly fell off the boat. Fortunately, the white-clothed woman reached out in time and caught her. What did she see? A man. A ghost. Her face was filled with shock. What was going on? There was actually someone in the lake, and his eyes were wide open. If he wasn't a ghost, what was he? One had to know that anyone who entered the lake would only be torn to pieces. The only exception was the young lady beside her. However, the two women immediately saw densely packed creatures appear in the depths of the lake. There were fish spirits, shrimp spirits, crab spirits, and so on. It was likely that all the water demons in Heavenly Treasure Lake had been mobilized. I'll go save him, said the white-robed woman. Before the azure-robed woman could stop her, she had already jumped into the lake and swam towards that man. She knew that she would not be hurt by the monsters in the lake, but that man was different. He seemed to have angered the entire Heavenly Treasure Lake, causing so many demon spirits to move out. Even she felt a little uneasy. Miss, the azure-clothed woman only had time to call out. She almost wanted to jump into the lake, but she knew that only her miss could swim in the lake. If she jumped into the lake, she would definitely die. So she could only wait on the boat, hoping that young miss could return safely as usual. However, this time, she was not confident because there were too many demon spirits in the water. Just looking at them made her heart go numb. Ling Han was surprised. He naturally saw the two women on the lake, but with his current height, did he need to care? He didn't use any of his power. He just moved with the waves. As for the water demons below him, it was simple. He was the key for them to gain intelligence and walk on the path of cultivation. Which one of them didn't respect him like a god? Now that he was about to leave, these water demons naturally had to send him on his way. However, Ling Han's aura was too terrifying. Not a single water demon could make a sound. They could only silently send him off. This woman actually wanted to save him? Ling Han's heart trembled slightly. This woman was truly kind and brave. Otherwise, when they saw such a dense army of water demons, they would immediately flee, let alone risk their lives to save someone. Seeing the white-robed woman approach, the water demons all revealed hostility. They were naturally close to this woman, which was why they had played with her in the lake since they were young. They viewed her as a companion, but when it came to Ling Han, things were completely different. This was their ancestor, their origin, and their totem. How could they allow anyone to blaspheme him? The white-robed woman couldn't help but be shocked. She naturally saw the killing intent of these water demons. She was innately sensitive to such auras, and her first reaction was to turn and run. But when she glanced at Ling Han, she gritted her teeth and continued diving down. She grabbed one of Ling Han's arms, and then desperately swam up to the surface of the lake. All the water demons wanted to make a move, but Ling Han released a powerful aura, causing them to not dare to move at all. Whoosh! The white-robed woman floated up to the surface of the water. She leaped up and landed on the boat. "Miss, you scared me to death." The azure-robed woman patted her chest as hard as she could. This was truly worrying. If she continued to trample on the water like this bulge would sooner or later become a depression. The white-robed woman looked at the surface of the lake and saw that the water demons had all stopped 300 feet below the water. They didn't come up again, but they didn't disperse either. They were all staring at her. This caused her heart to tremble. She had never seen these water demons react in such a way. "Let's go," she said. "Okay." The azure-robed woman hurriedly responded, then urged the boat to leave. Only now did the white-robed woman look at Ling Han. When she leapt onto the boat, she had also thrown Ling Han down. When she saw him, she almost stumbled, because Ling Han's expression was as if nothing had happened, and he even had a faint smile on his face. "Did you know that you almost died just now?" She humphed and said, "You're not a disciple of our sect?" "I'm not." Ling Han shook his head. He had only used his divine sense to sweep out, but it had already enveloped the entire Clear Sky sect. Everyone's every movement, every word, and every action seemed to be right in front of his eyes. In that instant, he already knew what was going on. "How dare you? Not only did you barge into our sect, you even coveted our sect's sacred lake." The white-robed woman reprimanded. Ling Han smiled. "Then why did you still save me? My miss has the heart of a Buddha. She can't even bear to trample an ant to death. Otherwise, if it were someone else, you would have long since been torn to shreds by those water demons and eaten as food." The azure-robed woman interrupted. Ling Han made an "oh" sound and said, "Then I can jump back into the lake to return the favor." "You're crazy," the white-robed woman exclaimed. She immediately calmed down. "When you reach the shore, leave immediately, and don't ever come back again. Otherwise, you won't have such good luck again." What a good heart, Ling Han thought to himself. It was like a thief who had entered a house, and although he did not steal anything, he was instead caught in a beast trap. Not only did she not inform the authorities to arrest the thief, but she also helped the thief escape and sent him away. In this world, there shouldn't be many kind people like her. She should be one of a kind. Ling Han tilted his head and revealed a listening expression. After a while he said, "Then, I owe you a favor. If you need my help, come find me, and I will naturally help you solve it." Chapter 30:14. Hearing Ling Han say this, the green-clothed woman immediately revealed a look of disdain. "Brat, who do you think you are? Even your life was saved by my miss, and you actually said that you can solve the problem for my miss? You're really boasting shamelessly." Ling Han only smiled, did not explain, and did not display any earth-shattering strength. At his level, many things could only depend on fate. If the white-clothed woman believed him, then he would naturally help. If she did not, then Ling Han would not forcefully interfere. The white-clothed woman also felt that Ling Han was a bit of a fraud. After the boat docked, she said, "You're on your own. She withdrew the boat and left with the green-clothed woman. After the servant took a few steps, she turned back and stuck out her tongue at Ling Han. Ling Han naturally did not take it to heart. He walked slowly, comprehending the mountains and rivers. He was puzzled. Since the plane had its own intelligence, why couldn't it do as it pleased? What power was restraining them? Ling Han sensed the mountains and rivers, hoping that he could comprehend something from them. No matter how big the world was, it was still made up of countless mountains and rivers. Through small things, it might not be impossible to see the true meaning of the world. Ling Han was walking in the territory of the Clear Sky sect. Naturally, many people saw him, but when they saw his calm and unperturbed appearance, although he was extremely unfamiliar, they thought that he was a disciple that an elder had just taken in, which was why they did not recognize him. Not a single person actually thought that he was an intruder. On the other hand, the white-clothed woman returned to her room. In just a short while a servant came over. "Miss, master invites you over," the servant said. The white-clothed woman nodded and followed the servant. Soon they arrived at a large hall. "Greetings, father." She bowed. "Rise." The white-clothed woman stood up, and her beautiful eyes swept around. She saw that other than her father Ning Daolan, there were two other people in the hall. One looked to be about 40 years old, and had a tall and sturdy figure. However, powerhouses could not be judged by their appearance. Perhaps it was not strange that he was older than Ning Daolan by a few 100 million years. The last person was a young man. He was very handsome, but his gaze was somewhat evil, which made her dislike him. "Hi Xian, this is Senior Han Zhang." Ning Daolan pointed at the burly middle-aged man. The white-clothed woman Ning Haixin bowed to the middle-aged man. "Greetings, Senior Han." "Haha, I've long heard that fellow Taoist Ning's beloved daughter is so beautiful. It seems it really is so." Han Zhang laughed as he spoke. This made Ning Haixin a little unhappy. Although it was a compliment, it made her very uncomfortable. One could only say that this Han Zhang was a boorish person. "This is Brother Liu Yang." Ning Daolan pointed at the young man. Brother Liu is the fourth son of immortal King Antong. He's an outstanding genius, and his future accomplishments might not be inferior to Lord Antong. Ning Haixin bowed to Liu Yang. "Greetings, Brother Liu. Sister, please get up." A strange light flashed across Liu Yang's eyes. He hurriedly stood up and dashed over to help Ning Haixin up. Ning Haixin took a step back, causing Liu Yang's support to miss. A trace of disgust flashed through her heart. This person was too brazen. He actually reached out to take advantage of her. "Haha. It seems that nephew Liu is very fond of your daughter." Han Zhang laughed. "Brother Ning, when do you think the wedding date should be set?" "What?" Ning Haixin was shocked. She was going to marry this Liu Yang, who was obviously not a good person. She looked at her father, hoping that Ning Daolan would immediately reject it. However, to her disappointment, Ning Daolan was actually seriously considering it. That wasn't a rejection, but a wedding date. For a moment she felt dizzy and almost fainted. What her father said next, she did not hear clearly at all. Her mind was in a mess. She only heard the last sentence. 3 months later. I await Liu Yang's coming to fetch the bride. She did not know how she returned to her room. It was as if she had lost her soul. Miss, what's wrong? The green-clothed woman hurriedly came over. Ning Haixin was dazed. With the support of the green-clothed woman, she returned to her room. She sat by the bed and suddenly began to cry. Miss, what's wrong? Don't scare me. The green-clothed woman was at a loss. Why was she crying all of a sudden? Ning Haixin did not respond and only sobbed. She was filled with grievances. She was going to marry, and she was actually only informed when the wedding date was set. Furthermore, Liu Yang was not a good person. She was born to be able to tell whether a person was good or evil, whether they had evil intentions or not. She could tell with a single glance. On Liu Yang, she only saw disdain and contempt. Marrying this kind of man, she would definitely spend the rest of her life in misery. She might even die of depression. Why did her father betroth her to this kind of man? She calmed down. The answer should be very simple. Celestial King Antong. Liu Yang's father was a celestial king, and Ning Daolan had great ambitions. She was not content with the ascending origin tier. She was strong, but she would one day transform into Tao. But becoming a celestial king would be different. She would be immortal and live as long as heaven and earth. Ning Daolan needed to use her daughter as a bridge to give herself a chance to become a celestial king, even if this hope was incredibly small. But shouldn't all parents in this world dote on their children? Ning Haixin knew that her father would be so cruel, because she still had 2 older brothers, who were enough to support the future of the Ning clan. As for his daughter, she would have to marry eventually. Wouldn't it be better if she could earn some benefits for herself while she was at it? Ever since she was young, Ning Haixin knew that her father did not dote on her much. He only cared about 2 things. The first was her own cultivation level, and the second was the growth of her 2 sons. She stopped sobbing because she knew that her father's decision could not be changed. She raised her head and said with incredible determination, "Xianyi, I want to leave this place." "Why?" The green-clothed woman was still completely unclear of the situation. "Father wants to force me to marry a complete stranger, and that person is a bad person," Ning Haixin said. The green-clothed woman only hesitated slightly, and then said, "All right, miss, let's go." The 2 women packed up. They naturally had a spatial god tool to store their belongings, so no one would be able to tell no matter how many things they brought. They walked out of the room and walked down the mountain. Their footsteps were calm, not wanting to be seen through by others. "And miss, look." The green-clothed woman suddenly pointed at the mountain path in front of them. Ning Haixin looked over and could not help but be surprised. Wasn't this the man she had saved from the heavenly treasure lake? Didn't she tell him to leave? Why did he look so relaxed, as if nothing had happened? Did he really think that this was his home? She wanted to walk over and lecture him, but when she thought of her own situation, she sighed and pretended not to see. The 2 women arrived at the foot of the mountain, but before they could walk out of the blue sky sex gate, they heard a faint voice say, "Miss, please go back. Reading on your phone is more refreshing." Chapter 30:15. Ning Haixin and the green-clothed woman were both shocked. "Who?" They saw a hunchbacked old man walk out from behind the pillar of the stone door. His hair was white, and his whole body exuded an aura of decay. Ning Haixin's pretty face instantly changed. This was one of the 2 generals by her father's side. His name was Zui, and he had just advanced into the ascending origin tier not long ago. Such an elite naturally couldn't coincidentally appear at this time. So there was only one possibility, and that was that he was specially monitoring her. Instantly, a strong sadness rose in her heart. Her father was really very passionate about this marriage. He had already predicted that she might run away, and even sent his most capable subordinate to monitor her. "Miss, please return," Zui said calmly, his voice devoid of any emotion. "Mr. Zua, I want to go down the mountain for a walk." Ning Haixin still wanted to resist. Sect Master said that Miss should cultivate in her room these few months, and don't do anything that would bring disgrace to the family, Zui said respectfully, but there was no respect at all. Ning Haixin bit her lip and slowly turned around. She was only in the severing mundane tier, so how could she be a match for an ascending origin tier elite? She started walking, her tears already flowing uncontrollably, but she had not taken 2 steps when a person appeared in front of her eyes. That young man that she had saved from the lake. In an instant, she thought of what Ling Han had said. If she encountered trouble, she could ask him for help. She had an impulse to speak, but couldn't help but mock herself. Even she had to go and rescue him. So what ability did Ling Han have? Could he change her father's decision? Could he defeat Zui? So, what use was there in speaking? Her steps gradually sped up, and when she could no longer see Ling Han, she felt slightly strange. Why did she see this person everywhere? Ling Han only watched as Ning Haixin left, and did not make a move. Everything was up to fate. If she believed him, he would naturally make a move. If she didn't believe him, why bother? However, the reason why Ling Han was interested in Ning Haixin was not only because she had saved him once, but also because this woman seemed to have an inexplicable affinity with him, which made him want to get to know her a little better. Speaking of which, when Ning Haixin returned to her room, her actions were strictly restricted. She was unable to leave her room, and could only watch the days pass by as the wedding day drew closer and closer. During this period, her two older brothers came to visit once each, but they didn't care at all whether their sister married the right person or not. Instead, they coldly asked her to be a good wife and mother. In addition, she must be loyal to her maiden family, and if there were any benefits, she must remember these two older brothers. This made Ninghai sad. In the eyes of her loved ones, she was just a tool that could bring them benefits. Several times, Ling Han's face flashed across Ninghaixin's mind, but she immediately shook her head, thinking that she was really desperate. How could this person help her? 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. The Clear Sky sect held a banquet and invited many important figures. After all, it was a marriage alliance with an immortal king, so the people who were invited all came to attend the banquet. Ninghai's heart was like dead ashes. She numbly allowed people to dress her up and covered her head with a red veil. Then, with the help of her personal maid, she came to the auditorium. In order to show how grand it was, a wedding would be held here first, and then when they returned to the Lu clan, another would be held. From this point, it could be seen that the Lu clan indeed gave the Clear Sky sect a lot of face. Thus, Ning Daolan's face was full of smiles, and she seemed very happy. Her two sons were also dressed in wedding attire, and helped their father receive the guests. After joining hands with the immortal king family, their statuses would naturally rise as well. Meanwhile, Lu Yang sat lazily and didn't receive the guests. As the son of the immortal king, he naturally thought highly of himself and couldn't be bothered to deal with these low-class people. Of course, immortal King Anting wasn't present. He wouldn't lower himself to such a degree. It's about time. Let's begin the ceremony, Ning Daolan said. The musician immediately began to work. Those who should play the instruments blew. Those who should play the instruments played. The sounds of musical instruments rang out, and joyous music began to play. Ninghaixin was like a marionette, being controlled by others. She had completely lost her soul. Her heart was already dead. Wait! A voice suddenly rang out, extremely abrupt. Who? Everyone looked towards the door, and saw that it was a tall and sturdy man. The strange thing was that he actually carried a round shield on his back. Upon closer inspection, the round shield seemed to have grown from his body. What do you mean? Ning Daolan's second son, Ning Xiuwei, immediately jumped out and pointed at the man. What I mean is that I don't agree to this marriage, the man said loudly. What? In an instant, all the voices disappeared, and everyone stared at the man. Could it be that this guy was Ninghaixin's lover? And now that he knew that Ninghaixin was going to marry, he specially came to stop her? If that was the case, this guy was really infatuated. Who are you? What right do you have to say something like that? Ning Xiuwei asked. The other party was only in the dividing soul tier, so there was naturally no need for his father and brother to come out, or else they would lose face. He found it strange that there was actually someone among the guests who had a relationship with his little sister. He hadn't heard of him before. Otherwise, when they sent out the invitations, they would definitely pay attention. Moreover, his little sister had almost never left the Green Sky sect, so how could she possibly know a man from outside? The man grinned. I, Gui Ho, have only one goal in coming here today, and that is to stop this marriage. He pointed at Lu Yang and said, This brat is not worthy at all. Lu Yang immediately stood up, his face full of anger. Fuck. He actually dared to say that he was not worthy. If they hadn't taken a fancy to a certain ability of Ninghaixin's, why would he marry Ninghaixin? My dear son-in-law, don't take it to heart. Just let Xiuwei deal with this kind of boorish person, Ning Daolan said with a smile. On this day of great joy, they naturally couldn't let the groom act. Lu Yang nodded. I don't want to see this kind of person. He sat down again, as if he was giving orders. Ning Xiuwei glanced at his father, and seeing him nod, he immediately waved his hand and said, Men, chase this audacious madman out. Yes, second young master. Immediately, 2 men stood out and pressed towards Gui Ho. These two were both in the dividing soul tier, and it was 2 against 1, so they were naturally confident. Gui Ho grinned, appearing very simple. He crooked his finger and said, Come. Scram. The 2 men attacked at the same time, attacking Guiho. However, Guiho merely turned around. Pung pung! These two attacks simultaneously landed on the shield on his back, instantly shredding his clothes into pieces. However, a strange thing happened. His round shield was actually growing out of his body. Chapter 30:17. Lu Yang was about to explode in fury. He was the son of a celestial king, and marrying Ming Haixin was already giving him enough face. But now, not only did someone cause trouble, they even called him an ugly freak. "Father-in-law, today is a joyous day for me and Haixin," he said calmly, suppressing his anger. But anyone could hear his displeasure. It was someone else's joyous day, so they naturally wouldn't allow anyone to cause trouble. Ning Daolan waved his hand at him, indicating that there was no rush, and that he would settle everything. He looked at his daughter and asked, "Haixin, what do you say?" After a pause he continued, "Don't forget, you are my daughter." These words seemed to be a reminder, but also a threat. As expected, Ning Haixin couldn't help but tremble. In her heart, her father had always been the synonym of authority, possessing absolute authority. Subconsciously, she wanted to obey her father, but the moment she opened her mouth, her heart trembled. If she obeyed her father, then the rest of her life would be filled with darkness. She had always been her father's obedient daughter, and never dared to disobey anything. But in her life, she had the intention to resist for the first time. She slowly turned to Ning Daolan, and her legs weakened as she knelt down. "I am grateful for father's many years of nurturing," she said, and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. She respectfully kowtowed 3 times. "However, marriage is related to your daughter's lifelong happiness. I don't want to ruin my future just like that. So please forgive me, father, and let me be willful for once." Ning Daolan's expression involuntarily darkened. He humphed and slammed the table heavily. "Evil girl, if you dare to take one step out of this door today, you can forget about being my daughter forever." Ning Haixin's delicate body trembled, but she turned around resolutely and walked towards the door. Step after step, her pace became faster and faster, as if her spirit had also undergone a transformation. Good. Ning Daolan's expression turned completely cold. He looked darkly at his daughter, and suddenly reached out to grab Ning Haixin. When an ascending origin tier made a move, how could a dividing soul tier cultivator block it? And a severing mundane tier cultivator block it? Guiho, on the other hand, was a little stubborn. He really wanted to attack, but the result was naturally like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He was sent flying by the terrifying force, and his turtle shell cracked. He was in an extremely sorry state. With a grab, Ning Haixin was pulled back. "Evil girl," Ning Daolan coldly snorted. His expression was unsightly. She had actually caused such a farce in front of everyone's eyes, causing him to lose all face. He felt incomparably humiliated. All the guests laughed coldly. They were all forces in the vicinity, and the difference between them and the Green Sky sect was not that great. However, if the Ning clan were to climb up the tree that was the Lu clan, then they would stand out from the crowd. Who would dare to provoke a celestial king tier force? Now that something like this had happened at the wedding, even if the marriage didn't fall through, how would the Lu family view the Clear Sky sect in the future? "Continue," said Ning Daolan. Under the suppression of a wave of energy, Guiho was unable to crawl back up. The sound of stringed instruments was heard again, and the atmosphere was festive. However, after such a disturbance, it was only on the surface. Everyone was waiting to watch a good show. Indeed, after a short while, they heard rumbling sounds coming from outside. One after another, grotesquely shaped people appeared. Some had gills, some revealed 2 giant crab pincers, and some had long prawn tails. With a single glance, it was clear that they were definitely the army of demonic beasts from the heavenly treasure lake. "Old Gui, what happened to you?" Seeing Guiho being suppressed on the ground, these water demons were both shocked and furious. They dared to touch someone from the heavenly treasure lake. "Which bastard did this?" a prawn man roared loudly. Everyone's expressions involuntarily became strange, and they all looked towards Ning Daolan. This was really like calling a monk bald in front of a monk. Ning Daolan's expression naturally became even more unsightly. His heart was boiling with fury. Originally, this was a joyous occasion for them to establish a connection with the celestial king. But now, all sorts of demons and ghosts had come to cause trouble. So what if he suppressed everyone? This matter was destined to become the laughingstock of the Green Sky sect, the humiliation of the Lu clan. He looked towards Ning Haixin. All of this was because of this evil girl. If this evil girl hadn't gotten along well with those water demons, how could there be today's farce? Boom! Flames of fury rose all over his body. He had already decided that he was going to start a massacre. Since they had already fallen out, he would take this chance to completely deal with the demonic beasts in the heavenly treasure lake and take over that treasured land for himself. You're courting death. Ning Daolan humphed coldly and brazenly moved, pressing down towards the crowd of demonic beasts. Old geezer Ning, don't be impudent. Two figures leaped up, heading towards Ning Daolan. Pung pung. Amidst a violent collision, Ning Daolan's attack was dispersed. They saw that the two who had moved were mermaids, and their bodies were covered densely with scales. They, too, were in the ascending origin tier, but were clearly inferior to Ning Daolan. After dispersing this attack, they both retreated, their faces incredibly red. Ascending origin tiers clashed, and this auditorium didn't have the protection of a powerful formation, so it instantly collapsed. Everyone hurriedly leaped out, the smiles on their faces even wider. They would really be able to watch a good show today. Ning Daolan's expression was indescribably ugly. He turned around and said, "Elders move together and capture these freaks." "Sect Master, that white snake," an elder said hesitantly. They naturally all wanted to take down the heavenly treasure lake, but because of that white snake, they hadn't moved all this while. It couldn't be helped. That white snake possessed a considerable true dragon bloodline, and its battle prowess far surpassed those of the same cultivation level. If they rashly started a battle, who knew what the result would be? Ning Daolan waved his hand. "This time, it's the heavenly treasure lake that provoked this battle, so we have no choice but to agree." Yes, everyone nodded. That's right, they hadn't initiated the provocation. And it was the heavenly treasure lake that had broken the agreement first. The group of ascending origin tier elders all stepped out. There were 8 of them in total, and adding on Ning Daolan, his generals Hung and Ha, Sui and Jiang Feng, there were a total of 11 ascending origin tiers. Yet the heavenly treasure lake didn't have so many ascending origin tiers. After all, their development time was limited, unlike the Blue Moon sect, which of those ascending origin tiers hadn't cultivated for hundreds of millions, or even billions of years. If they started a battle, the demonic beasts of the heavenly treasure lake would definitely be defeated, and it would be very normal for them to be completely annihilated. Ning Haixin's body was restrained, yet she said, "Uncles, please don't make any more sacrifices for Haixin. It's not worth it for Haixin to accept her fate. Please return, uncles, and definitely don't start a battle." "Little Ning, there isn't a single coward in our heavenly treasure lake. Today, we definitely have to rescue you. Don't worry, our elites haven't moved out yet." The demonic beasts of the heavenly treasure lake all said, not panicking. Their confidence naturally came from that white snake. She had long since cultivated to the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, and she possessed the true dragon bloodline, so her battle prowess could crush all those of the same cultivation level. End of this chapter. Chapter 30:18. Ling Han sat at the side, sipping his wine. He had no intention of making a move. His cultivation was too high. In his eyes, this kind of conflict was no different from a farce between children. Naturally, it was impossible for him to be moved. He wanted to see when Ning Haixin would think of him, and ask him for help. Moreover, just how approachable is this woman? On the other side, the Blue Sky sect had already started the battle. All the ascending origin tier elites moved, launching attacks at the demonic beasts of the heavenly treasure lake. All 11 of them, including Ning Daolan, emitted shocking killing intent. It was just as well. Before that white snake appeared, they would first kill off all the ascending origin tiers here. At that time, they would surround and attack the white snake. He did not believe that the 11 of them would not be able to take down a snake spirit. The battle unfolded, and true enough, the demonic beasts on the side of the heavenly treasure lake were immediately at a disadvantage. Though they had many people, there were only 7 ascending origin tiers, so they were definitely at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. And in terms of individual strength, Ning Daolan, who was at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, was even more so superior to everyone else. Therefore, this was a battle with a great disparity in strength. It wouldn't be long before the winner was decided. All the guests were surprised. Could it be that the demons of the heavenly treasure lake that had been troubling the Green Sky sect would be completely eliminated today? If that was the case, then it would be a joyous occasion for the Clear Sky sect. Who didn't know that the heavenly treasure lake was rich in all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures? It was only because there were so many demons that the Clear Sky sect could only get a little every year. Humph! At that moment a cold snort rang out. A white figure appeared, streaking across the sky like a heavenly dragon, exuding a shocking aura. Immediately, everyone stopped what they were doing. Everyone looked up and saw that it was a huge white snake that was tens of thousands of feet long. It had 2 small horns on its head and 4 legs under its abdomen. "Is this a true dragon?" someone said with a trembling voice. This pressure was too great, as if an immortal king had descended. "No, its horns are still small, and it only has 3 claws. It can only be called a flood dragon, not a true dragon." However, I'm not far from becoming a true dragon. The powerhouses of the Clear Sky sect knew that this was the white snake from the heavenly treasure lake. This white snake was extremely powerful, possessing the bloodline of a true dragon. In the future, it had a high chance of becoming an immortal king. If not for her, the heavenly treasure lake would have become the private property of the Clear Sky sect long ago. Now that this lord had appeared, he was emanating a boundless might. Although White Fairy, Ning Daolan was determined to fall out with the demons of the heavenly treasure lake, she was still shaken by the appearance of the white snake. He had once fought with the white snake and suffered a crushing defeat. If not for the white snake wholeheartedly cultivating and hoping for peace and quiet, the Clear Sky sect would not have been able to occupy the heavenly treasure lake. Now that she was facing the white snake again, Ning Daolan was immediately traumatized. The white snake's figure flashed and suddenly disappeared from the sky. She turned into a beautiful woman in a white dress. She had a big chest and round buttocks. Her waist was so small that it could only be held in one hand. It was truly a slender waist. She glanced at Ning Daolan and said, "I want to take your daughter away. Do you have any objections?" These words were truly domineering. Ning Daolan's momentum had long been suppressed. She instinctively wanted to shake her head, but she quickly suppressed the palpitation in her heart and said, "White Fairy, my daughter has long decided to be betrothed to Brother Liu. He is the son of Immortal King Antong." He was using the Immortal King to suppress the white snake. "Although you are very powerful and can crush those of the same level, what can you do against an Immortal King?" The white snake was unmoved. She only waved at Ning Haixin. "Come." How could Ning Haixin come? She was bound by Ning Daolan. The white snake's action was actually done for Ning Daolan to see. It was completely forcing her to let go of her daughter. A mere little snake dares to be so arrogant. Lu Yang finally could not sit still. "Fuck, are you guys going to let me get a wife or not? Is it fun to jump out one after another? He is the son of the Immortal King. Who dares to provoke the Immortal King?" The white snake was decisive. Without a word of nonsense, she directly slapped at Lu Yang. Boom! In the midst of the surging force, the phantom of a large white snake appeared. Ning Daolan hurriedly acted. If something happened to Lu Yang here, how could he shirk the responsibility and explain it to Immortal King Antong? Pung! The two forces collided, forming a storm that swept out in all directions. Instantly, everyone hurriedly fled, afraid that they would be affected. That could be a fatal disaster. Bang, bang, bang. The force crushed over, and the originally dilapidated auditorium was instantly turned into ruins. Ning Daolan's face was flushed. This attack had indeed been neutralized by him. But under the backlash, he felt as if his whole body was about to split open. He could not help but be shocked. After so many years, although his strength had improved greatly, and although the white snake had not been able to advance into the immortal king stage, the gap between the two of them had not shrunk. Instead, it had widened. It was only a single strike, but his whole body ached, and his bones felt like they were about to break. The white snake humphed and struck out again. Boom! The phantom of the large snake appeared again. Although Ning Daolan's whole body was in pain, he had no choice but to act and neutralize this attack for Lu Yang. Pung pung pung. The white snake struck out 10 times in succession, but all of them were neutralized by Ning Daolan. However, Ning Daolan's expression was extremely unsightly, and his aura was extremely chaotic. He was already powerless to attack again. Otherwise, his body might explode first. But the white snake struck out again without the slightest hesitation. She wanted Lu Yang's life with this palm strike. "Father-in-law, save me quickly!" Lu Yang cried out loudly. This palm strike came crashing down, and it was not something he could block at all. Ning Daolan wanted to act, but he was unable to do so at all. He could not possibly throw away his own life, right? Boom, the palm strike arrived. Lu Yang was about to die, but right at this moment, a palm suddenly reached out from nowhere and caught the white snake's palm strike. Alas! A light sigh sounded out, and someone said, "How did my son offend you, that you actually want to kill him like this?" Boundless multicolored light appeared in the horizon, and then a person walked over. His body was coiled with a strange light, and he was like the ruler of the heavens and earth. He was high and mighty, and all living beings had to prostrate before him. "Immortal King, Father!" Lu Yang called out loudly, filled with pleasant surprise. He had been a coward for half a day, and was either scolded as an ugly monster or attacked by others. They did not take him seriously at all, yet he could do nothing about it. Now it was all good. His father had appeared. Though in tongue was only a first heaven celestial king, in front of a celestial king, what was an ascending origin tier worth? The white snake finally showed a solemn expression. She had not thought that celestial king in tongue would actually come here personally. What to do now? Boom, celestial king in tongue moved, grabbing out at the white snake. The white snake naturally would not allow herself to be captured without a fight, and immediately transformed into her original form. Her 30,000-meter-long body possessed endless power, and with a shake, she could cause tall mountains to collapse and the earth to sink. End of this chapter. Chapter 30:19. However, even if an ascending origin tier had all kinds of techniques, what use could they be in front of a celestial king? The palm that immortal King Anting struck out enlarged infinitely, and it was an entire 3 kilometers long. Under the pressure of the enormous palm, the white snake was instantly suppressed firmly onto the mountain, and it was completely unable to move. In front of celestial king tier, ascending origin tiers would not be able to withstand a single blow. With just one palm, the powerful white snake had become a prisoner. This was an immortal king high and mighty. One could only bow down and worship him. "Kill me! Come and kill me!" Lu Yang shouted. He had almost been killed by the white snake just now, which filled him with resentment. He glared at the white snake. "You look pretty good in your human form. I don't mind playing with you." These words were filled with humiliation. Not only was the white snake furious, but the other demonic beasts in the heavenly treasure lake also howled. Ning Hai's heart was filled with self-blame. If it wasn't to save her, how could the demons have ended up like this? In reality, even if White Snake and the others did not stand up for her, Immortal King and Tongue would have wiped out all the demon beasts in the heavenly treasure lake. His goal was obviously for the heavenly treasures growing in the lake. Otherwise, why would he come all this way? They could totally sit at the Lu clan's residence. After all, there was a banquet to be held. Who's not convinced? Immortal King Anting asked. His voice was extremely gentle, yet it carried a supreme dignified aura that caused the hearts of everyone to feel as if a boulder was pressing down on them, and it was extremely uncomfortable. The monsters of Heavenly Treasures Lake wanted to speak, but under the might of the Celestial King, they could not open their mouths and could not make a sound. Mere little demonic beasts, yet you dare act impudently before this seat? Immortal King Anting said indifferently. He pointed out with a finger. Pa! A demonic beast was instantly blasted into pieces. Ignorant. He pointed again. And another demonic beast was blasted into a rain of blood. Stupid. With every sentence he spoke, he would point out with his finger, killing a demonic beast. No matter which demonic beast it was killed in a single strike. They were incomparably weak. The demons could finally speak, but they could only roar helplessly. They could not change their fates at all. You're not convinced? Immortal King Anting asked. Without waiting for anyone to reply, he continued to attack with his finger, killing the demons. So what if you're unconvinced? In front of absolute power, you're all just dregs. In just a few breaths of time, more than 30 demonic beasts had died in his hands. Enough, 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 Ninghai cried in his heart. Please let them go, I'll marry. Celestial King Anting acted as if he had not heard. He was a dignified celestial king. So how could he possibly make a deal with a mere severing mundane tear? In front of him, everyone could only obey his orders. How could they have the qualifications to bargain? Puff with a flick of his finger. Another demonic beast turned into a rain of blood. Someone save me, Ning Haixing cried in his heart. No matter who it is, as long as it can save everyone, I'm willing to pay any price. She looked around blankly and saw an incredible person. The young man she had saved from the heavenly treasure lake was sitting in the ruins and drinking. Everything here was in ruins, but there was still a table in front of him and a chair under his butt. He was drinking leisurely, as if he was detached from the world. Such a strange scene should have shocked everyone. But no one seemed to be able to see him. No one looked at him. She suddenly thought of Ling Han's previous words, and could not help but have a thought. Can you help me? Ning Haixin asked in Ling Han's direction. However, her throat was already hoarse from all the shouting. Her voice was very soft and could not be heard at all. Of course. Unexpectedly, that person seemed to have heard her. He nodded and spoke in a gentle voice. Ling Han stood up and shook his head slightly. He had been too naive. He had not planned to show himself. He walked slowly towards Ning Haixin and said, How do you want me to help you? Huh. Suddenly, they saw a young man walk out and speak to Ning Haixin. Everyone was surprised. Why was there someone who was not afraid of death? Did he not see that all the demons in the heavenly treasure lake were being slaughtered because of Ning Haixin? Do you want to die? The others did not recognize Ling Han. But when the demons in the heavenly treasure lake saw Ling Han appear, they all became excited. None of them had seen Ling Han's strength before. But because of Ling Han, they had gained intelligence and could vaguely sense Ling Han's vast power. In their hearts, Ling Han was a totem, a god. Their god only needed to come and save them. This made all of them extremely excited, and tears flowed uncontrollably from their eyes. Who do you think you are? How dare you meddle in other people's business? Ning Xiuwei jumped out. He was extremely angry. This was the Clear Sky sect. Why did everyone treat this place like a market? Ling Han glanced at him and casually pointed with a finger. Pa! Ning Xiuwei's body immediately exploded, turning into a rain of blood. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Fuck, just now, Celestial King Anting pointed with a finger and killed people like flies. Now Ling Han also pointed with a finger and killed Ning Xiuwei. Was he provoking Celestial King Anting? Celestial King Anting's eyes also widened slightly, and he looked towards Ling Han. Bastard, bastard. Ning Daolon was stunned at first, and then he flew into a rage. He cared about his two sons the most, and he had placed too much hope on them. Now that his two sons had died miserably at Ling Han's hands, how could he not be angry? Return my second brother's life. Ning Xiuhong roared loudly, and then he pounced towards Ling Han. Xiuhong! Ning Daolon hurriedly attacked as well. Ling Han's strength was unfathomable, and he naturally did not wish for another son to die. Ling Han pressed with a finger. Pooh! Ning Xiuhong instantly turned into a rain of blood. Although Ning Daolon had attacked, could he block a celestial sovereign? You. Ning Daolon spat out a mouthful of blood. It was not because he was injured by Ling Han, but because he was angered. Two sons, gone just like that. He was filled with hatred. Evil girl, are you satisfied? He looked at Ning Haixin and roared. Ning Haixin was speechless. This was his father. He pushed her into the pit of fire with his own hands, without a trace of pity, and 2 of her elder brothers were killed. But he was so sad. In comparison, how could she not be sadder? Dao friend, how should I address you? Immortal King Anting asked. He didn't attack, because Ling Han completely disregarded Ning Daolan's attack. Though that was only the attack of an ascending origin tier elite, and he could similarly ignore it, there was only one possibility, that he could do this. The other party was an immortal king. One should know that he was only at the first level of heaven. As long as Ling Han was a celestial king, he would be able to stand on equal footing with him. He had no choice but to be cautious. Ling Han acted as if he didn't see it, and pressed his finger towards Ning Daolan again. Since Ning Haixin couldn't say how to help, then he would use his own method to help. No, Ning Daolan only had time to cry out once before her entire body transformed into a bloody mist. End of this chapter. Chapter 30-21. Ling Han had carefully studied this new disciple of his. The fastest update. Why did Ning Haixin have such a strong affinity? While Ning Haixin was cultivating, Ling Han had been analyzing this disciple. With his abilities, it was impossible for Ning Haixin to discover anything strange. After so many years, he must have discovered something. However, this discovery was close to nothing. This was because he had discovered a small dot of light in the depths of Ning Haixin's consciousness. It was very inconspicuous, and he had only found it after searching for a long time. However, he could not detect what was in the depths of the dot of light. This dot of light was very fragile. If Ling Han forcibly opened it, it would immediately explode. Perhaps this would not hurt Ning Haixin, but it could be the key to her affinity. Ling Han naturally would not act rashly. More importantly, as Ning Haixin's cultivation level grew, this speck of light also grew, and Ling Han discovered that Ning Haixin's affinity with him was also increasing. Using himself as a reference, he found that Ning Haixin's influence on him was indeed increasing. Of course, this increase was negligible, and the influence on him was pitifully small. It was almost negligible. However, to be able to influence a celestial venerable with level 5 cultivation and level 7 battle prowess, what kind of concept was this? Ling Han was very curious, so he decided to properly nurture Ning Haixin. When the latter's cultivation level increased a little more, the spot of light would become even bigger, as if it had grown strong and healthy. Perhaps he would be able to pry into more secrets. 100,000 years had passed, and Ling Han believed that his doppelganger should have already repaired the plane, so it was time for them to return. Let's go, he said softly. Yes, master. Ning Haixin bowed. After cultivating for so many years with Ling Han, she increasingly understood how unfathomable this master was. Speaking of which, although Ling Han had saved her from the abyss of suffering, he was also the enemy who killed her father and brother. However, she only had admiration and respect for Ling Han, and there was not a shred of hatred in her. Ling Han opened his hand and forcibly connected the space of the Sky Treasure Lake to this place, forming a spatial tunnel. The two of them crossed one step and arrived above the Sky Treasure Lake. Who are you? A demon immediately flew out. When it saw Ling Han and Ning Haixin, it became excited. It hurriedly knelt and kowtowed respectfully. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Get up." "Yes, my lord." That demonic beast said respectfully. It was the thick-backed tortoise Gui Ho. If Ling Han wanted to retrieve his doppelganger, he would have to go to the Heavenly Treasures Lake, which was a node. This was because the plains and the void corresponded to one another. If he tore open the void at some other place, who knew where he would end up? He did not say anything and tore open the space. Instantly, void energy surged, causing the blue sky to change color. The void energy storm could reach the power of a 6th-step cultivator. This was only a middle-grade plane, and the strongest cultivator here was only equivalent to a dozen 4th-step cultivators. How could they withstand the void energy storm? However, there was a power that surpassed the rules in this world. The tear in the space was quickly recovering, preventing the energy storm from continuing to wreak havoc. "Come back," Ling Han said softly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, many figures flew out and pounced toward him. fusing into his body. Boom! Ling Han's power instantly skyrocketed. His aura also increased wildly. The entire sky treasure lake boiled, and the water seemed to evaporate completely. Demon beasts flew out. When they saw Ling Han, they immediately knelt respectfully. Their souls trembled. This kind of power was too terrifying. After a while, all the clones returned. Ling Han closed his eyes and sensed. He could not help but smile. Very good. All the planes had been repaired. His battle prowess had returned to its peak. As long as he did not encounter frenzy, no one in this world could harm a hair on his head. Haixin, is there anything you can't let go of? Ling Han asked. There's nothing I can't let go of, Ning Haixin immediately replied. Ling Han nodded. Okay, then I'll take you away. My lord. Right at this moment, a white-robed woman flew over and knelt down 9 meters away from Ling Han. I wish to follow my lord and serve you faithfully. This was White Snake. After 100,000 years, her cultivation had improved. She had reached level 2. Her progress was very shocking. This should be the effect of her bloodline. Otherwise, her talent in martial art would not be so strong. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, Fine. Follow Haixin. Protect her and give her some pointers. Yes, master. White Snake was overjoyed. She hurriedly knelt in front of Ning Haixin. Greetings, young master. Aunt Bai you? Ning Haixin was at a loss. Since she was young, Aunt Bai had doted on her. Now, she was kneeling in front of her and calling him young master. This terrified her. Ling Han waved his hand. It's fine. He was one of the strongest celestial venerables in the world. Ning Haixin was his disciple. It was normal for a level 9 celestial king to be his servant, let alone a mere level 2 celestial king. Even celestial venerables had to be polite to her. Therefore, from now on, this lass should get used to it. Yes, master, Ning Haixin said. All the demonic beasts looked at the White Snake enviously, even though it was following Ling Han as a servant. No, it was following Ning Haixin as a servant. What kind of existence was Ling Han? As long as it could get even the slightest bit close to him, then its future would be limitless. Unfortunately, they did not have the guts to say that they wanted to follow Ling Han as a servant. Ling Han grabbed Ning Haixin and White Snake together. Then, he tore open the void and began his journey to the plain. He did not want to return to the foreign battlefield. Therefore, he spent a little more time. Half a month later, he tore open the void again and appeared in the Xuanma plain. Another 9 days later, he returned to his family. Ling Han. Everyone was overjoyed. This Ling Han would disappear for millions of years at the drop of a hat, and this always made them slightly worried. Ling Han asked about Ling Fifen's situation. Thankfully, this brat was very low-key and did not encounter any trouble. Moreover, he had successfully taken 3 steps forward and was currently still fighting in the foreign battlefield. Ling Han introduced Ning Haixin and White Snake to everyone. He did not mention Ning Haixin's special ability, and only casually mentioned that he had taken in a disciple. Speaking of disciples, he felt a little guilty. In all these years, he had not properly guided his disciples. He began to walk around and gathered his disciples that were scattered in various places, and even in various planes. Chen Rui Jing, Yin Yong Wang, Kang Xiu Yuan and Jiang Yufeng. These were the 4 disciples he had taken in his last life. There were also Ding Ping, Zhu Yao, Fu Tianxing, and Ning Haixin. These were the 4 disciples he had taken in his last life. Comparatively speaking, the martial art talent of his 4 disciples was too weak. At first, it was already difficult for them to reach the Genesis tier. But now that they had come to a super high-level plane, and with the addition of Ling Han's alchemical pills, their limits had also been pushed up considerably. Chapter 30-22. The 4th disciple was now a unified first firmament immortal king. Ling Han did not raise them to the 9th firmament in one step. Instead, he made them cultivate step by step and comprehend the various aspects of life. Obtaining an ability that far exceeded one's mental state was actually not a good thing. It could lead to big problems. Ling Han wanted these disciples to cultivate their hearts. In the future, When he reached the 7th step, and the plane power in his body reached large success, he might be able to help them break through the immortal king restraint and become an Empyrean. On the other hand, the strength of the 4 new disciples varied greatly. The one with the highest achievement was Fu Tianxing, who was already at step 4. He was only 1 level lower than Ling Han. Next was 9 Demon. He was a 9th firmament immortal king, but he was still far from becoming a heavenly lord. Perhaps he would never be able to do so. The 3rd was Ding Ping, who had just stepped into the 9th heaven. Similarly, it was extremely difficult for him to become a celestial venerable. The 4th was Ning Haixin. He was only a pitiful 2nd severance, and was still boundlessly far from becoming a celestial king. What more a heavenly venerable? Take your time. For example, Little Green, the Stone Man, the Rabbit, the Old Ginseng, and so on. They had all taken the Celestial King pill to advance into the Celestial King tier, which also cut off the possibility of them continuing to advance. Unless Ling Han reached the 7th step and formed his own plane, he might be able to change the rules and allow them to continue advancing. After giving some pointers to his disciples' cultivation, Ling Han began to act like a hands-off shopkeeper again, deducing the heavenly venerate symbol. His current plane had already reached the limit of his realm, so all he needed to do was push his realm forward, and the speed of his cultivation suddenly skyrocketed by many times. Thus, Ling Han had enough free time to deduce the Empyrean symbol. Time flew by. 1,000,000 years had passed, and Ling Han had deduced 3 6th-rate symbols. He came out of seclusion and gave pointers to everyone's cultivation. Then he went to find Vale and invited him over. He carefully scanned Ning Haixin. Wally's eyes were glowing green as he scanned Ning Haixin's body back and forth. Ning Haixin and the white snake were amazed. Interesting, Wally said softly. Ling Han was surprised and said, "Strange, you actually know how to say interesting. Did you change your sex?" Wally had always been cold and calm. Even if he was smashed to pieces, he would still ask calmly and rationally, "Why?" instead of fighting angrily. That was why Ling Han found it strange that Wally was muttering about something interesting. Vale glanced at him and said coldly, "Don't disturb my work." Well, this was a big shot. Ling Han had no choice but to stand at the side with his arms crossed. Vale finally stopped scanning. He raised his head and looked in front of him. His eyes shone again, but this time it was white and formed a human body. From the curves, it should be a woman. "Look here," Wally said, pointing at a corner of the woman's head. There was a spot there that was particularly bright. Ling Han nodded. This was Ning Haixin's brain. There was a light spot in her mind, and it should be the source of her secrets. Very interesting. Wally nodded and looked at Ling Han. "I've also seen this light spot in your mind." "What?" Ling Han's eyes couldn't help but focus. He was surprised, and there was an indescribable throbbing in his heart. "Look." Wally's eyes shone again and formed another human body. This was a man, and there was also a spot of light that was particularly bright on his head. "This is the holographic image I scanned and saved when I first saw you," Wally said. "Zoom in." Light flashed in Wally's eyes. Suddenly, the 2 human bodies disappeared and were replaced by a glowing object. This was the light spot in Ling Han's and Ning Haixin's minds. After magnifying it many times, it became something that could be seen with the naked eye. Ling Han compared it carefully, and the surprise on his face was even more obvious. It was true. Although the 2 light spots were somewhat different, they seemed to have an inexplicable connection. It was like the fruit on a tree, and there was an inseparable connection. What surprised Ling Han even more was that he had never found such a light spot in his body. He was a 5th-step celestial master. "Haixin, did you find such a light spot in your mind?" Ling Han asked Ning Haixin. Ning Haixin shook her head. "Never." "Then look again," Ling Han said. Ning Haixin used her divine sense to scan the mind, but soon she shook her head. "I didn't find anything." Ling Han stretched out his finger and pointed. Again. He also used his divine sense to guide Ning Haixin's divine sense. He had clearly touched the light spot, but Ning Haixin turned a blind eye to it. She couldn't see it at all. "Could it be that I can't find it?" Ling Han let Wally guide him, and he also found the light spot in his mind. At his level, if he didn't actively open his mind, who could explore it? But Wally had already said that the light spot was here, but Ling Han still couldn't see anything. Just as he guessed, the person who had the light spot couldn't see the light spot. Strange, it was too strange. A dignified fifth-step celestial venerable actually couldn't see what was in his body? For some reason, Ling Han suddenly thought of the previous world's will. Because a long, long time ago, even in his previous life, the world's will and madness had done something to him. Only the two of them possessed an unfathomable ability that even the current Ling Han was unable to detect, right? The world's will or madness. Although the world's will made it sound nice, Ling Han didn't believe it. This guy was too secretive. Considering Chong Yen and the other's strange behavior, Ling Han believed that the world's will must have a big secret, or even a big conspiracy. He had a headache. He hadn't even dealt with madness, and now another world's will had appeared. Although it was dead, could it really be trusted? He had to be on guard. Alarm bells rang in Ling Han's heart. If he had not coincidentally met Ning Haixin, taken her as his disciple on a whim, and even called Wall over, he was afraid that he would never have discovered that there was such a thing inside his body. You already knew, why didn't you sue me? Ling Han asked Wally. Wally rolled his eyes. First, you didn't ask me. Second, I'm not obliged to answer you. Third, I don't know what this thing is either. If I told you without knowing the situation, it would go against my accuracy and precision. Fuck. Ling Han was speechless. This guy was still speaking so eloquently. However, he was even more surprised by Wally's facial expression. Since when did this guy know how to roll his eyes? This was too human. Although Wally had always been in human form, Ling Han never felt that this guy was like a human. He was always expressionless and emotionless. This guy had taken the wrong medicine. Breaking Anti-Theft Chapter. Chapter 3023. Did you take the wrong medicine? Ling Han asked directly. You're the one who took the wrong medicine. Wally was disdainful. Ling Han was even more surprised. This guy actually knew how to bicker and express his disdain. What a strange thing. You evolved again? Ling Han asked. I've evolved the emotional system, Wally said with a straight face. All right. Ling Han was suddenly interested and said, why don't you talk to the big black dog? If Wally also learned the big black dog's despicable nature, then what would the result be with his strictness? Interesting, he was full of anticipation. After sending Wally away, Ling Han decided to focus on training Ning Haixin, so that this disciple could grow up quickly. He led Ning Haixin on a journey, and they traveled through every mountain and river in the Xuanma Plain. The white snake also followed by their side, and she carefully took care of Ling Han's food and drink. Moreover, she played the role of Ning Haixin's teacher most of the time. To be honest, Ling Han was not good at teaching. Being strong and being good at teaching were two different things. The border seemed to have returned to peace. Chong Yen and the others did not seem to have given up. But the battle at the front line was still tight. Frenzy was getting fiercer and fiercer, forcing the main battlefield to retreat. The main battlefield wasn't something Ling Han could intervene in yet. Previously, he'd only been there for a short while, and he'd almost been killed. And this battlefield had Xian Chihu and the other three great prodigies. Though the situation wasn't that optimistic, the situation was much better than the main battlefield. Therefore, Ling Han could not help much even if he went, unless he could reach step 7. He made good use of his time. While training his disciple, he was also cultivating, striving to reach the peak of step 5 and step 6 as soon as possible. If that was the case, his defense would probably be stronger. If he faced Frenzy again, he would not be as vulnerable as he was now. Frenzy, how strong was it? Ling Han believed that if Frenzy devoured a few more dimensions, its power might be comparable to a strike from the origin world. It could even shatter the soul of a step 7. Perhaps it was out of consideration for their own safety that Chong Yen and the others actively fought against Frenzy. It was because this was related to their lives. Soon 300,000 years had passed. Ning Haixin had indeed improved, but he had only reached the 5th severance. On the other hand, the white snake had reached level 5 under Ling Han's guidance. In 300,000 years, she had advanced a total of 3 cultivation levels. This was very astonishing, but just look at Ning Haixin. Celestial kings had advanced 3 cultivation levels. Yet she had only advanced 3 minor levels in the severing mundane tier. In comparison, her cultivation speed was so slow that it was simply too horrible to look at. The white snake was speechless. Ning Haixin had at least 10 times the cultivation resources she had. But the treasures that could make an immortal king advance several steps only had this little effect. Fortunately, she loved Ning Haixin very much. Otherwise, she would definitely criticize Ling Han for accepting such a stupid disciple. After another 100,000 years, Ning Haixin advanced to the dividing soul realm. Logically speaking, a severing mundane tier would need 100,000 years to advance a single step, and a dividing soul would need at least 1,000,000 years to advance a single step. But what surprised Ling Han was that Ning Haixin's cultivation speed had not slowed down. It seemed to be so slow that it could not be any slower, so it was just like that. Every step she took was very solid. Ling Han was already searching for the new plane that would be created from the collision of the 2 realms. When Ning Haixin advanced to level 9, he would plant it in her body. Of course, if Ning Haixin could be like him and use the power of the plane to create a plane, then Ling Han would be willing to let her take this path. 1,000,000 years, 2,000,000 years, 3,000,000 years, and Ning Haixin steadily advanced to the Celestial King tier. This surprised the White Snake, because she had also spent more than 3,000,000 years to become a Celestial King. And Ning Haixin had already caught up to her in terms of advancement. Ling Han had been paying attention to the dot of light in Ning Haixin's mind all this time. As her cultivation level continued to increase, this dot of light also slowly grew larger, and he could see it more clearly. There were layers of light patterns on it, constantly changing as if they were evolving something. However, though the light was not very dazzling, it was incredibly blurry. Ling Han decided to wait until Ning Haixin was a little stronger before exploring the secret of this light. That way, he could guarantee that he would not hurt her. Every 100,000 years, Ning Haixin would advance 1 level. There were also only 9 levels of Celestial King tier. So after only 800,000 years, Ning Haixin had reached the 9th heaven, and the White Snake was still only the 7th heaven. This shocked her, and made her admire Ling Han's judgment even more. See, that was why Ning Haixin was a disciple, and she could only be a servant. When Ning Haixin advanced to the peak stage of the 9th heaven, Ling Han would take her to travel through the plains, preparing to walk his own path. If she could not walk, then he was already prepared, and would plant a new plane into her body. Coincidentally, Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing finally had a child, and gave birth to a little princess. Ling Han was overjoyed, and decided to postpone his trip. When he returned, he would immediately see this granddaughter of his. As expected, though the little girl had just been born, she already had the embryonic form of an exceptional beauty. In the future, she would definitely be a great enchantress who could bring disaster to nations and people. Though Ling Han's strength was close to invincible, and he was also his maternal grandfather, whether it was Ling Shi, Fu Tianqing, the empress, or even Ling Dongxing and his wife, they were all firmly opposed to Ling Han giving the little girl a name. It couldn't be helped. Looking at the birds and beasts by his side, what kind of names were Little Qing and Little Stone? Thus, Ling Han was mercilessly stripped of his right to name, and his protests were all ineffective. Could it be that he could still suppress his family one by one? In the end, the little girl was named Fu Sikhen, and her nickname was Chun Chun. Though Ling Han was displeased for a while, he was soon overjoyed, and hugged the little girl, unwilling to let go. Little Chun Chun inherited her parents' bloodline, and was a celestial king at birth. Her starting point was astonishingly high, and her path of cultivation was incredibly smooth. A mere 100 years later, she had reached the 9th heaven. This was too fast. In this regard, Ling Han did not feel happy, but rather felt that the little girl had not properly polished her foundation, and had not deeply pondered and experienced many cultivation levels. Yet she had advanced so quickly. When she advanced into the celestial venerable tier, the sequelae would definitely show. Thus, Ling Han decided to bring little Chen along. Ning Haixin wanted to break through to the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, and she wanted to experience life and temper her heart. With Ling Han taking her along, Fu Tianxing and Ling Shi naturally had nothing to worry about. "Father, you cannot lead Chen astray," Ling Shi warned. Ling Han rolled his eyes. This daughter of his had been so obedient in the past, but now sigh. He set off with the two women and began to travel through one dimension after another. To Ling Han's surprise, Ning Haixin very soon proved that she could not walk down Ling Han's old path and nurture endless power of the dimension in her body. Strange. Ling Han had no choice and could only plant a dimension that he had prepared long ago into his disciple's body. Chapter 30-25. The words of the world's will were unclear, hiding a deep secret. Ling Han had never truly believed it. Was it really the world's will? Or was there such an existence? Ling Han was shocked. It claimed to be the world's will, so it really was the world's will. It only showed him a fragment of history. Could this prove its identity? In the name of the world's will, the words it said were naturally full of justice, making people believe it without a doubt. Wait, the world's will said that it modified me, giving me the ability to create a new plane and raise it to a super high level. Is this the ability it gave me? Or did it release some of the life energy in my light? Life is the world's most powerful force, the cornerstone of the world. This kind of power can give me the ability to evolve a plane. It's normal to push a plane to a super high level. Life should have the ability to evolve. So did it give me this ability, or did it just activate it? But no matter what, this world's will is not simple. I even suspect that it has not really disappeared. It's really chaotic. I haven't even dealt with frenzy, and now there's extinction, a so-called world's will. Ling Han tried to decipher the information in his sea of consciousness. If he could obtain the life code, then he would be able to create things out of nothing and evolve his plane into a real world. Wait, this is the eighth power? The eighth power was the opposition between yin and yang, life and death, chaos and order. It was essentially a kind of conflict. If Ling Han had the power of life, then it would correspond to the power of death. And the power of death was too simple. Which celestial venerable did not have the power to destroy all life? If he could master the eighth power, then he would truly have the ability to destroy frenzy. Ling Han kept trying to figure out the information in his body, but there was nothing he could do. The information was too fragmented and could not be deciphered at all. His heart skipped a beat. What did Ning Haixin get? He communicated with Ning Haixin, but she did not know what the information in his sea of consciousness was. Fortunately, she could show it to Ling Han. Both of them had that mysterious light, which gave them the possibility of communication. Ling Han obtained as much information as he could. After careful study, he discovered that the other party also possessed the life code. It was also fragmented and incomparably profound. Ling Han studied it carefully, trying to piece the information together. But it was no good. It was as if this was only a part of a huge puzzle, and too many parts were missing. So it was impossible to put together a complete picture. However, he still combined some of them, allowing him to gain layers of comprehension and sink into a deep meditative state. Suddenly he opened his eyes, revealing a look of surprise. The surrounding environment had changed greatly. Damn, how many years has it been? Ling Han looked around. Ning Haixin had also disappeared. She probably saw that he was in seclusion, so she left first. Forget it. Let's not talk about this for now. Ling Han stretched out his hand and spread it out. A stalk of grass immediately grew out of his palm. It grew rapidly, then bloomed, bore seeds and grew old. In the past, he could also do this, but he needed a seed. He only catalyzed the growth of this life. But it was different now. He was creating things out of thin air like a creator. Frenzy could do this. It could transform into a plane, and even create a sixth-step celestial venerable. In comparison, Ling Han was too weak. Ling Han could only create the most ordinary weeds, which were worthless. Not to mention a celestial venerable, he couldn't even create intelligent life forms. But the key was that he had taken the first step. This was an ability he had obtained from cracking some life code. Ling Han pondered. The life code I obtained isn't complete. Since Ning Haixin and I have appeared, there might be more people with such a light in their sea of consciousness. Perhaps I need to combine the life codes of 10 or even 100 people to truly grasp the ability to create things out of thin air. However, there are trillions of living beings in the world, and they are hidden in the depths of the sea of consciousness. If I explore them one by one, the speed of my search will not be able to keep up with the reproduction of life. In other words, even if I have endless life, this task will never be completed, and the person with the light doesn't know it. The sea of consciousness is extremely important, and it can't be opened for others to see. Even if I offer a sky-high reward, it will be useless. Sai, this is really difficult. Forget it, I won't worry about this for now. I'll think about it when I get back. Ling Han returned to Anya City and reunited with everyone. Only then did he realize that he had been in seclusion for a full 3 billion years. No wonder the surrounding environment had changed so much. 3 billion years was enough for the seed to turn into mulberry fields. Things remained the same, but people had changed. Grandfather. A lively little girl called out to Ling Han in a crisp voice. Her appearance was really too beautiful. Ling Han was stunned. Little Chen Chen. I'm already an adult. I'm not little Chen Chen. The girl said innocently. Ling Han laughed. No matter how old you are, you're still my precious granddaughter. Little Chen Chen, little Chen Chen. The family reunited, and it was naturally very lively. The Ling family held a banquet to welcome Ling Han back. After this, Ling Han didn't plan on running around. There were only 2 places. One was Anya City, and the other was the extraterritorial battlefield. Everyone was responsible for the rise and fall of the world, especially when he was so powerful. 3 billion years had passed, and Ling Han had reached the peak of the 5th step. Without so many planes holding him back, his cultivation speed was naturally fast. One had to know how many celestial venerable symbols he had, and how many combination talismans. As he prepared to break through to the 6th step, he was also deducing the celestial venerable symbols. To him, even the red medicine should be useless now. As for the plain core, it had to be a super high-grade one. But there was only one super high-grade plane in the world. Madness was one, but even thinking about it was extravagant. He couldn't blow up the Xuanma plane, right? Firstly, Ling Han couldn't do it. Secondly, even if he could, he wouldn't do it. So he could only rely on his own hard work. Perhaps it would take an epoch or even longer. Ling Han wasn't sure. The closer he got to the end, the harder it would be to break through the realm barrier. So Ling Han planned to deduce the celestial venerable symbols with all his might. This was the key to communicating with the intrinsic particles. Maybe he could deduce more symbols that could help him advance to the 6th step? He went into seclusion, but he didn't stay for too long. After deducing a celestial venerable symbol, he would come out and reunite with the girls. After all, he didn't have many children, and the girls wanted to have a child with him. He had to work hard. 7 billion years had passed. Suddenly, shocking news spread. Chong Yen and the other 7th-step supremes had left the extraterritorial battlefield. Breaking Anti-Theft Chapter. Chapter 3026. 5 7th-step supreme martial artists had given up on their jobs. When Ling Han heard this news, his first reaction was, of course, to not believe it. The survival of this Yuan world was related to everyone. So what if he was strong enough to reach the 7th step? Without heaven and earth. So what if he could never die? Moreover, after frenzy devoured the entire Yuan world, it was very likely that he had the strength to kill a 7th-step expert. The origin world of the previous generation had shattered the extinction realm into pieces and destroyed the soul of a 7th-step supreme being. Then, after devouring the Yuan world, madness would definitely have such an ability. How could 7 steps be safe? How could Chong Yen and the other 4 not have thought of this? They had actually willfully left the foreign battleground. Wasn't this just speeding up the pace of frenzy's advance? Could it be that after Feng Wuding's death, they thought that no one could control insanity, so they gave up? This possibility was too small. To be able to take 7 steps, which one of them didn't have a firm will. As long as they didn't truly die, they would fight to the end no matter how desperate they were. Besides, as long as the Yuan world is not destroyed, maybe a real savior will come out? It was too strange. Ling Han couldn't accept it. In that case, the 5 Supremes had other plans. In cahoots with madness? That didn't seem to be the case. What benefits would there be in cooperating with Frenzy? Besides, if Chong Yen and the other 4 had really sided with Frenzy, then they should be restraining Lin Luo and the others. Why did they only retreat from the extraterritorial battlefield? There was something strange about this place. Ling Han muttered to himself. The 5 Supremes withdrew from the foreign battlefield. But could they still stop their frantic advance? What was the situation in the main battlefield right now? If the main body of chaos couldn't stop it, and only relied on the Xuanma plane to resist, then it would only take a few trillion years at most. It wouldn't even take a single epoch before it would fall. This would also mean the destruction of the origin world. Ling Han's first reaction was to head to the main battlefield to fight Frenzy, but he immediately dispelled this impulse. No, he was only at the 5th step, and didn't have a true undying body. Was he going to send himself to death on the main battlefield? No matter what, he had to advance 6 steps and further increase his defensive power. If he couldn't even receive a single attack from Xiao Chun, it would be a joke. But how to advance to the 6th step as soon as possible? Since Chong Yen and the other 4 have returned, why not go and play with them? Previously, these 5 people had been finding trouble with him. Now it should be time for him to take the initiative. Although he wasn't truly undying and indestructible, only Frenzy could break through his defense. As for the others, even Step 7 could only stare at him fearlessly. Ling Han thought about it, and decided to wait. If he charged over just like that, it would be a situation where neither of them could hurt the other. At most, it would be a battle of words. That would be meaningless. But when the 5 great Supremes returned, would they establish their own power? Would they act as a loner? Ling Han did not believe that Chong Yan's group of 5 would be so pure. If that was really the case, then he could only accept it and fight with them. Therefore, he sat down again and observed the situation. After all, the withdrawal of the 5 great Supremes from the extraterritorial battlefield was just a rumor. It had yet to be confirmed. Ling Han continued to deduce the Empyrean symbol. Just like before, every time he deduced a new symbol, he would come out to walk around and communicate with the women. In the blink of an eye, 1,000,000 years had passed. It was no longer a rumor that the 5 great Supremes had withdrawn from the extraterritorial battlefield. This caused a commotion among the upper echelons. Some forces had already started to pack up and leave. They were going to follow the passageway between the 2 worlds to the end of the Yuan world. Then, even if Frenzy really swallowed the Yuan world one day, they would definitely be the last to die. Ling Han shook his head. Traveling between planes wasn't a joke. There were some places with energy storms that required the strength of a quasi-Empyrean to pass through. There were endless planes, and who knew how long it would take to reach the end? In any case, this was none of his business. He found out that Chong Yan's group of 5 had indeed established their own dojos, and had actually taken in disciples. This puzzled Ling Han no matter how hard he thought about it. It wasn't like Frenzy was destroyed and the world was at peace. Why were Chong Yan's group of 5 so carefree? Opening dojos and taking in disciples, had their heads been kicked by a donkey? Ling Han pondered for a moment, and decided to set off immediately. He would go to the dojos of those 5 to see what was going on. Secondly, he wanted to see what Chong Yan's group of 5 was up to. There was something fishy about this, a very big fishy thing. After thinking about it, he decided to delay it for another tens of thousands of years. This was because he had already derived 110 sixth-rate talismans, and he only needed 1 more to reach perfection. He continued his seclusion, communicating with heaven and earth, connecting with the void, and grasping the power of life. Although it was just a tiny bit, the speed at which he derived the Empyrean talismans was much faster. Ling Han's mind was constantly enlightened, and it was as if he had been reborn. Another 30,000 years passed, and he came out of seclusion. It was a great success. With a thought, The 111 sixth-rate talismans all revolved, instantly increasing his strength by 3,000 times. Ling Han entered the void and punched out. Hong! The void trembled, and the energy storm in front of him was instantly punched out a hole that was 10,000 miles long. After a long time, the energy storm stirred again, filling up this area. Chong Yen Poyu. If the 5 of you don't grasp a few more first-rate talismans, I'm afraid you'll only be suppressed by me. Knowing that Ling Han was going to set off, everyone was excited and expressed that they wanted to play with him. Ling Han was speechless. How was he going to play? Was the dojo of one of the 5 paragons really that fun? However, it had really been a long time since he had brought everyone along. So be it. He brought everyone, stored them in the celestial visitor house, and then set off. There was no need to hurry along the way. Every time they arrived at a place, they would stop and tour. Thus, only after 17 years had passed did Ling Han finally arrive at the dojo of the Empyrean Poyu. This place was called the Poyu 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 Poyu, but because it was the same title as the Empyrean Poyu, no one directly referred to the dojo by its name. Everyone simply referred to it as the dojo. Ling Han settled everyone down at a very far place. Once he started a battle with Poyu, who knew how much terrifying destruction would be caused. He brought along a few disciples, as well as Little Qing, the Stone Man, the Rabbit, the Old Ginseng, and the Large Black Dog. This lineup could be said to be quite strange. If it was just this few people, he would be able to send them all away before the battle with Poyu began. There was no need to worry about any problems. Ayo, 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 Grandpa Dog is going to do something big. The large black dog stood on his hind legs, his iron underwear reflecting a cold light as he twisted and turned. Grandpa Dog, please hug my thigh. The rabbit grabbed onto the large black dog's thigh and used its head to rub the other's iron underwear. Go, go, go. Be careful that Grandpa Dog doesn't eat spicy rabbit heads. The large black dog swung his behind. Grandpa Dog, do you want to pee? You can just pee on the ground. The old ginseng had a vulgar expression on his face. The large black dog almost jumped up. Why did you want me to pee? Could it be that you wanted to plant it and absorb nutrients? Scram, Grandpa Dog doesn't pee. The old ginseng was astonished. Isn't it true that dogs can't stop peeing? That's because dogs can't stop eating shit. The stone man corrected. He was very naive, and even boasted to the large black dog. Grandpa Dog, Big Rock is right, right? Chapter on Breaking and Guarding. Cell phone reading. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.